This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
2018 ended with Henry Bennett becoming the Classic Indycar Series' second driver to ever walk away with a championship. This year is going to be all about which driver can take Henry Bennett's place at the top step, and in November, walk away as champion. Autodromo Jose Carlos Pace in Sao Paulo plays host to the first round of the 2019 Classic Indycar Series, and when we last visited back in 2017, it was Lucas Logykal who headed to victory lane, but today, can a new contender arise and get their season off to the start they need? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the RaceSpotTV Esports Network and RaceSpotTV. I am Jack Stiles, and alongside me, all race long, is going to be Randy Chenworth, bringing you all of the action. And Randy, this is a circuit with a lot of history, and the drivers need to have a good race today and get their season off to a good start.
Definitely is, especially in South America, probably the most iconic racing circuit of that entire continent. Seen a lot of great racing here in the open wheel division, and these guys in the classic Indy cars, these old IRO5s, I think are set to put on a show because we have a lot of big names taking part tonight.
There are indeed some big names as we will take you throughout the course of this race. Reigning champion Henry Bennett is not on the grid today, so Henry Bennett is not competing this first round. However, Matt Cook is looking very content so far, very competitive so far. Looking at the timings, probably about the top 10, all covered within a second in practice. However, as we see with lots of forms of motorsport, Randy, practice means nothing.
Yeah, it definitely does, and especially the length of the practice here, 3 hours, and of course with the new ever-changing track conditions we have on iRacing, those 3 hours, a lot of different things can change in how the track actually feels to the drivers. Maybe people who got a lap in 2 or 3 hours ago now nearly, maybe have a slightly quicker track than the drivers have right now, but names up and down the field, I think the expected names you'd see here in the top 10, the Matt Cook, Dave Walshes, and Robert Grossers of the world, pretty much taking home the top 3, but an interesting entry that we've seen a couple times in the Indy cars around the iRacing community, I think, Jack. Currently 4th in practice, at number 9 is Sage Karam. He's made a lot of big bids already this season, coming into sim racing in a much higher effect than he was previously. He's been putting on one hell of a show.
He has, and I think with the Classic IndyCar Series, he is going to be one of the drivers to watch. Just to give you an idea what the weather is like today for yourselves, ladies and gentlemen, when practice started, it was 10 o'clock in sim, 23 degrees in the air, and 26 degrees on the track. Well, it's almost 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and you can see that the air temperature hasn't really risen. It's up to 25 degrees, but because of the sunshine, the track is 46 degrees Celsius, northerly wind at 21 kilometers an hour, and of course, that just means that for these drivers, Randy, there's a lot more for them to concentrate on, especially with a hotter track. And the one person to show you how this track works is going to be Joshua Baird. He's prepared for us a lap guide, and we're going to show it to you now.
Welcome to Interlagos. We are on board with Robert Grosser to give you a tour of the track. Entering 1, we will brake hard, heading down the steep S-bend of 1 and 2. Coming out of 2, we will have an opening turn 3, which will allow us to be able to go full speed. The backstretch between 3 and 4 may be used as one of the few opportunities for passing if there was a mistake between 1 and 2. Entering 4, we will be pretty hard on the brakes. After 4, we will be able to put our foot down on the gas and go through turn 5 at full speed. Turn 6 and 7 will be tricky high-speed bend, as it is a blend of speed and finesse to carry our momentum into turn 8. Passing here is not recommended, but you may see it at the end of a race for a last-minute push. Turn 9 is one of my favorite, as the banking of the turn will allow you to go quite fast for a horseshoe turn. Turn 10 is a slower, tighter horseshoe that will be one of the toughest turns on the track as it is so tight. Turn 12 is going to be the most important turn to nail on this track, as it is a very tight left-hand turn and will set you up for a pass if you can nail the apex. Turn 13 through 15 are just slight bends that will be full speed and make for interesting passing situations as we come to the final stretch of the track. This has been a 2019 Logykal Classic IndyCar Series track tour brought to you by Josh Baird and Robert Grosser. I hope you enjoy the race.
The 2019 Classic IndyCar Series is once again brought to you by Logykal Innovative Engineering, but throughout the season there is going to be a host of other sponsors supporting different parts of the championship. The Triple Crown, the 2019 overall Triple Crown, is going to be brought to you by New Centric Solutions, and the 2 rounds at Indianapolis on the road course and Road America will be brought to you by Edifice Incorporated. And we also have a round at Laguna Seca later on this year is going to be brought to you by the Carol Hatton Breast Cancer Care Centre, and that is going to be supporting those guys, and very much a charity event for that one. Those are the guys who are going to be bringing you the 2019 Classic IndyCar Series, every single race broadcasted live by us, RaceSpotTV, on the iRacing Esports Network. Qualifying has got underway for the first round of the championship, and the drivers are all out setting their first lap times. Randy, what's going to be important with this qualifying session? You get 10 minutes, but you only get 4 chances to get that lap in.
Of iRacing here in open wheelers, and it's going to be Matt Cook. We've seen him for such a long period be relevant. Of course, those other drivers will need to keep an eye on over this next 7 minutes as well. We'll try to get looks at Sage Karam, like to possibly Josh Chin, maybe even Randy Shoemake, some others in there as well. But Matt Cook's going to be coming off the final corner, putting his first timed lap of the session.
And of course, Matt Cook last year in 2018, he was the driver who went home with the Rookie of the Year award. He never competed in the Classic IndyCar Series before last year. And well, he dominated the ovals. He did pretty well in the second half of the season on the road side of things, Randy, to come home 2nd overall in the championship. And I can't seem to remember him doing a road race until about October.
Well, Matt Cook, even though he quote-unquote may have never competed in this series up until last season, throughout sort of the midpoints of the 2010s, 13, 14, 15, even earlier 2012, Matt was very relevant in this car. He has a lot of experience, so while he may have been a rookie in the season in that series, he was by no means a rookie overall. Josh Chin, first round of laps come through. He's going to go pole. We're going to keep an eye on that number 9 car of Sage Karam, though. Dave Walsh currently 2nd, and Matt Cook, that lap we just saw him put in, we'll put him 3rd quickest. Right now, Josh Chin and Dave Walsh, the only 2 drivers in the 117s.
And currently looking at the driver of Sage Karam, he's still on his first lap, exiting out of the final corner for this long run up the hill towards the start-finish line. We'll be able to see what kind of a lap time he can put in. Can he beat Josh Chin's 1:17.695? He's currently on pole by just a 1/10.5. Sage Karam is going to come across the line, and he's going to put himself an 18.5. That only puts him 9th so far, Randy. So I wonder whether that's just a banker lap to start off with for Sage Karam, and then he's going to really go for it in these remaining 3 laps.
Well, Sage was definitely quicker in the practice. We saw him actually be 4th in that practice, but we talked about the fact that 3-hour session and the fact that 3 hours of time goes by as we were going from pretty much late morning to afternoon. It is possible that when Sage put that time in, may have done so earlier in the session, but you're right, could have potentially been a banker. Maybe a little bit of nerves getting to Sage a little bit. Maybe these next couple laps will be quick as he's already on his 2nd and running through the uphill double right.
And one other driver to watch out for today and for the rest of the championship as Lucas Laville puts himself 3rd on the grid. As it stands is Dave Walsh. Dave Walsh is very quick, very capable in this car, already proven himself. He won the 2018-2019 Classic IndyCar Winter Series, so the championship they hold over the winter while they aren't running this long summer series. Dave Walsh was able to take home the honours from that one. Last year it was Henry Bennett who won that one, Randy, and Dave Walsh has won it this time round. So surely for Dave Walsh, the next step is to win the summer championship, which is what Henry Bennett did.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be working on that as Sage is going to come through for his next lap. Currently sits 10th, and Sage is going to not improve on that 2nd lap. So he's probably going to be a little bit not happy with that. Probably going to try to really push here as the timing on the session already starts getting ticked down here pretty quickly, Jack. Inside of 5 minutes now left to go for these drivers. 26 of Andy Werner, though, another strong driver in his own right. He's yet to put a lap in.
Yeah, Andy Werner has not put a lap in yet. Neither has Vesiula Ole, Jan Hoffman, Johnny Garrett, Caleb Weekly, Sasha Lamp, and Stefan Schlacker. So those are the guys who still need to put a lap time in this qualifying session. New rule for 2019 as well is that every driver who qualifies has to be within 107% of the pole sitter. And that pole sitter is now Dave Walsh, who's managed to beat Josh Chin to that starting position, Randy, by just 1/1000th of a second.
The narrowest of margins dividing the top two right now, but really no one's anywhere close to that top two. Dave Walsh and Josh Chin, 694 and 695 respectively. Rest of the field, 0.4 of a second off pretty much. Just under 0.4 technically to third, but all the way down the field, 0.4 or greater. So right now, Dave Walsh and Josh Chin, they're showing very, very good pace at the moment.
And it's going to be interesting to see what Matt Cook can do, because he's back out on his third lap, so he's on another flyer. But ahead of him in the standings is Lucas Leville as it stands. But the gap between them is so small. It's not even 1/10 of a second. So Matt Cook, all he's got to do is get a good run off of one corner, and then he's back on third position. And this is why qualifying can get so exciting, especially in the final stages where these drivers are trying to eke out every single 100th out of this car. And this car is very difficult to get a quick lap time out of, as has been proven over the years, as we just see everyone start to file in the last few laps. And I think that for these drivers, that's going to be important for qualifying, not just today, but throughout the whole season.
Yeah, it really is for these guys. The car really is a handful, especially on cold tires. As Matt Cook's going to come through, can he improve? He's been bumped back down to 5th as Jan Kajnen goes third quickest, and he does not improve on that last lap. This is a 19.086, a full second off the mark. And as you get deeper and deeper into this session, Jack, of course, the way you set up a car for qualifying, you're going to have the tires pumped up a little bit. You're going to have the car light on fuel. It's possible once you get into these later laps, lap 2, lap 3, and even into lap 4, those pressures might be just a little bit too high to get that optimal lap, and I think that's what we're seeing. We've not seen too many laps come towards the tail end of this session.
And one other thing to consider is that over the course of 10 minutes, the track conditions can change so much. With the clouds moving and the sun shining on the track temperature can rise. And that's exactly what's happened. It's gone up to 48 degrees Celsius, so there's going to be even less grip on the track. So I think we've now seen the fastest times in the session. As I say that, the clouds start to move over the circuit and it gets a little bit darker. So this final lap for some of these drivers could be absolutely vital, depending on those track conditions.
And especially how much of the actual track do you have left? You look at Matt Cook right now, you talk about that shadow coming overhead. He's just really coming through the final sector, so he might put in a personal best for this session, and he might just get the opportunity to improve just through those last couple corners. But did he maybe have enough coming out of the first couple sectors? We're about to find out, as that lap's going to go to a 118.176. Does not yet improve.
No, so for Matt Cook, that is all of his chances for qualifying done. The best that he will start today for round number 1 is 5th position, alongside Timo Yami as it stands, who's managed to put himself 6th. Robert Grossi still inside the top 10, still looking very quick. And obviously, we said about Sage Karam currently sitting 10th. Another driver who could be quick and very interesting to watch today, Randy, is Hugo Hernandez. Hugo Hernandez is someone who, if you probably live outside of Brazil and don't follow motor racing, you'd have never heard of. He does race in real life. He races Formula Ford. So we've actually got a bit of a in real life races competition going on in 9th and 10th at the moment between Hugo Hernandez and Sage Karam.
Yeah, we probably do. And if you're Hugo Hernandez, you're probably going to be pretty satisfied about that. Sage Karam, driven in the Indy 500, likes the Sebring 12-hour, of course, driving a GT3 spec car at IMSA for a number of years in the Lexus. You know that he's going to be, I think, pretty happy knowing that he's just a currently Formula Ford driver to put someone like Sage in the rearview mirror on the lap times, especially by a full 10th.
And as qualifying comes to a close, we can confirm that of the 37 drivers who are lining up for this event, 36 will start. Jonathan Diggs has not made the 100% limit, and we can show you your starting grid. Getting his championship off to an amazing start. Dave Walsh lines up on pole. Alongside him is going to be Josh Chin. Third place is going to go to Joni Kajanen, with Lucas Leville starting 4th, Matt Cook 5th, Timo Yami 6th, Robert Grosser 7th, and Andy Werner lining up 8th. Hugo Hernandez and Sage Karam will round out the top 10 with Randy Shoemake starting 11th with Stefan Schlacher alongside in 12th. Jan Hoffman is going to be lining up 13th, Marshall Stanley 14th, Hans Pickenden in 15th, Cyril Gitzhofer 16th, Franz Josef Stumm 17th, Andrew Adair Saunders 18th, Joe Ringrose is going to be starting 19th, Jos van der Ven rounding out the top 20. Logan Simmons is going to be rounding out 21st position. Johnny Garrett going to be starting alongside him. Vessi Ollier did get a time in and he went 23rd. Sasha Lamp lining up alongside him for Torque Freak Racing in 24th. Alex Thack 25th, Matt Molnar in 26th, Mike Gulliker 27th, Daniel Schulmeister in 28th, Carson Brodvie in 29th, Andrew Aitken going to round out the top 30. Your remaining 6 drivers, Josh Baird, Sam Winton, Rory Collins, Toad Novosad, Zach Sohar, and Caleb Wheatley are all the drivers who made it into the 107% in qualifying. And Randy, 36 cars into the center S for the first time. It's going to be good, especially in the mid-pack, I think, this start, because these drivers are going to be very, very careful.
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty hectic start, I think, for all of these guys. Really going to push you. I mean, 36 cars into turn 1 is going to be very, very tight. You have to be patient. We have the rolling start, which is, I think, going to calm things down relatively nicely for everyone involved, but it's still going to be a hectic run down into that Senna S, which we've seen problems happen before historically at this track, seen it in pretty much all the sort of series we've seen run here, be it open wheel, even be it GT and endurance racing. These guys will need to kind of try and tiptoe because you got a long race, 71 laps, an hour and 50-minute run time limit. However, it's going to be somewhere more in the realm of about 90 minutes for these guys going all the way through, and 2 pit stops. We're expecting 4 tires and fuel every time you come down pit road.
Yeah, and of course today is also a road course, so no cautions expected unless we get a pile-up which blocks the circuit. That'll be the only time we will see the safety car, other than at this very point today while the drivers are all heading themselves round to the grid. You can actually see the snake starting to set itself off on your screen, ladies and gentlemen, and the final cars are only now getting running as the leaders will bring it round through this final right-hander down the hill towards that final corner. And I think actually this section in the section of this circuit, Randy, it's very, very difficult because it's very twisty, and in these cars the power application you have to be so careful.
Yeah, it is. It's very difficult, and especially with the cold rear tires. And right now we're getting a little bit of I think, a cloud coming over. That's going to be cooling that race surface down just a little bit.
As we head ourselves up to the start line, the field will be under the control of Dave Walsh for the first time this year. The 2019 Classic IndyCar Series will be getting underway in just a moment. And it's going to be one long season ahead, running from now until November with the Indianapolis 500 rounding out the season. The pace car is going to dive itself down onto the left-hand side of the track, onto pit lane in just a few moments' time. And the field is now under the control of Dave Walsh. And we are racing it into Interlagos for the first round of the 2019 Classic IndyCar Series. Riding on board with Andy Werner today for the view of the start. He's going to head himself down to the inside in the 26, try and get a few positions. He's actually going for a move on Timo Yami, who's sat on the inside through the center race. A good start there by Andy Werner, and he's actually up a couple of positions.
Yeah, great start there from the 26. The 93, though, of Josh Chin did not get a good start at all. He nearly lost 2 spots. He falls back into 3rd, just ahead of the 2-car of Lucas Seville, but the 77 of Joan Kajanen able to jump up into that 2nd spot as Dave Walsh is currently trying to stretch the gap.
And Sage Karam in 10th position, clearly showing that qualifying for him wasn't the greatest. So getting this race off to a good start, he's up to the 6th position now. He managed to jump 4 drivers in the first few section of corners. Brilliant start by Sage Karam, but I think for Dave Walsh that was a brilliant execution of the start, and wonder whether he actually caught Josh Chin off guard.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what happened. The way that Josh pretty much fell, he immediately right down the order. And they're going to come up now to the final sequence of corners for the first time, and onto this long front straightaway. The slipstreaming here at Interlagos will start, and it'll be the 37, the 77, and the 93 leading the train. Those top 2 have a little bit of a breakaway over that 3rd place runner of Josh Chindo, but will Joan Kajanen make a move into turn 1?
It's going to be interesting to find out. He was looking to the inside into center S for the 2nd time, but it's a 71-lap race, taking the sensible decision to not push the limits too far, as these drivers are going to get everything up to temperature. The tyres still aren't going to be up to pressure, not up to temperature. Still a few more laps yet until we're going to start to see the optimum pace start to come through. But after that first lap, very big moves into the front and the midfield. Robert Grosser had an awful start. He's down almost 4 positions on where he started, dropped outside of the top 10, in fact. Some drivers making their way through in the rear, or through the mid-pack, really. Matt Molnar is up 6 positions. Joe Ringrose up 5. So for some of these drivers, getting used to this again. We've got a car stop, the number 42. That's Sasha Lamp. He's had an incident coming off of turn number 4 and 5. As we can see on the screens now, he's getting back going again.
We're going to get a quick replay to see what exactly happened to him, but the car doesn't actually look too bad. I think maybe a little bit of damage on the left front, but otherwise seems pretty much intact. Is there a little bit of contact there with the 16 on the inside? Maybe as he comes through turn 4. No, that's actually just a self-spin running a little bit wide. He does make contact with the wall, however, but for the most part, I think for that 42 car, everything is going to be pretty much smooth and okay. Not big damage whatsoever.
Yeah, and obviously for Sasha Lamp, not the way that he wanted to start his race, but he's got a little bit of drama out of the way early. He's now got to fight his way back through as all the leaders start their 3rd lap of the race. We've got a 4-car breakaway for the lead containing Dave Walsh, Yoni Kainen, Josh Chin and Lucas Laville currently riding on board with the number 77 machine, looking back towards Josh Chin in the Team Chimera car, under pressure from Lucas Laville. And it's interesting to see how they've already got a breakaway, Randy, and showing that there's still pace in this front field. And for Lucas, he is the driver who, when we visited here last with this series, he won this race. So for him, actually, he's in a good position coming into this one today because he knows that he has the pace here, and with the support of the team that he's with now with Logical Vortex Sim Racing, he's in an even better position, and I think he's going to have a brilliant race here today.
Yeah, Lucas Laville really is one of the stronger drivers on the road courses in this series, but I think especially this season, I think there's a handful of drivers who are going to be taking part a little bit more regularly. I think it's really up the talent level, and it's going to be a big challenge of who actually can win these races. As right now, Laville trying to keep touch with Josh Chin. He's put in a fantastic second half of the lap. We saw that top 2 had a breakaway over Josh, basically going through that first sector, but now Josh has really brought in the rear of that 77 car, and it's pretty much turned into more of a 3-car breakaway, but Lucas doing everything he can not to lose touch as well.
And Josh Chin showing that domination and bringing himself back with the fastest lap of the race so far. He sets a 1 minute 18.099. We've had a car around in the center S. I believe it was the number 3 machine. It's Robert Grosser, who almost ends up on his roll bar, but manages to save it. Heavy damage for the German in the opening stages of this event, Randy. And with the rule change for this year of no more fast repair, it means that for this driver, his race is now over.
Yeah, that's pretty much game over for him. He's going to have to come down pit road, and let's see what happens. There's a big move down in towards turn 1. He just gets it wrong, just locks up that rear end, smacks that wall on the left-hand side of your screen, and then, oh, that rejoin. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of a penalty for that at some point, even post-race, Jack, because that was not Robert's greatest move ever, the way he rejoined the circuit and making contact into traffic like that.
Yeah, replay once again up on your screens, ladies and gentlemen, looking towards turn number 1 for a move on, I believe this was the number 54 machine, or it was Hugo Hernandez, lost it. Heavy contact with the inside wall, and again with the car that he was trying to overtake, which I think is going to be interesting. And as you see the rejoin, there was just a car on the inside. I believe that was the number 54. I think what really did it, though, was the second contact through that last part of the center S, Randy, with the into the side of it where he was already half spinning. That, I think, was really what nailed the coffin for Robert Grosser.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens as we check back in with your leaders. The 3 of Josh Chin has already lost tab with those top 2. We remember as we actually see Sage Karam in the background making a move. I believe that's going to be for 5th on the racetrack, and that's on the 26 of Andy Werner. And Sage is going to be able to get that done. So move Karam very quickly here in the opening few laps. We're already running lap 5, and he's already passed 5 cars.
Andy Werner was looking to try and take the position back, however wasn't able to get it done. So Sage Karam is now up into position at number 5, as you said, Randy, and his eyes are now going to be completely forward to try and catch this leading group. He's got to make up 2.5 seconds. Bearing in mind that 5 laps ago he started in 10th position on the grid. I think he can close this gap. Sage Karam, he might have had a bad qualifying, but he definitely isn't out for the count just yet. We've had a spinner in the middle section of the track, the 167 Jos van der Ven. He is stuck and stranded with the midfield all going past, trying to rejoin. He has been able to get it done. Not quite sure what happened to the 167. However, damage is appearing on the car.
We're about to find out as you see him go up the hill through the double right. I think it sort of wherever he makes this mistake is going to be here. I see a lock up into that first hairpin there on the right, and he just basically spins off to the right-hand side and noses into that tire barrier. Unfortunately there for the 167. However, going to be a relatively light contact. And while that car is going to have damage and will likely have to come down pit road, Jack, that should just be a relatively simple chain to the front wing for him, as we see Matt Cook now getting challenged by, I believe that's Timo Isanyemi in the 47, or the 43, excuse me.
That is indeed Timo Isanyemi in the 43, and it actually looks as though Matt Cook has been able to get past Timo Isanyemi since the start of this lap. So obviously he was able to do that through the center S. However, Isanyemi still looking to try and get past, running very wide, using every section of the track possible to try and get a run on Matt Cook as we head ourselves into this very twisty middle section. Behind is the number 7 of Stefan Schlager, teammate to your current race leader Dave Walsh, as they all head themselves through that second right-hand hairpin down the hill. I have a feeling Matt Cook is going to be very comfortable in that position now, Randy, because Matt Cook is one of these drivers that once he gets past, I can't see him being passed by anyone.
Yeah, he is very difficult to get around, and believe me, I've had a couple runs with Matt Cook in the past. Been both in an Indy 500 running around Matt, as well as a couple road course races in the old ISO WC series that used to run here on iRacing, run by our very own Will Vincent, in fact, adequately named Logykal by Mr. John Porzuk. But yeah, you're right, Matt Cook, very difficult to get around in these cars. He's also someone that you can generally have confidence in when you're racing, that he's not going to do anything silly. If he's going to make a move, he's generally going to make it stick or back out of it. Very rarely is he going to be one that you see do something a little bit silly. So one of the drivers that if I were on track with him, I'd have full confidence racing around him.
And for Matt Cook, his focus now is ahead to the driver of Andy Werner. We've already seen Werner come under pressure from Sage Karam, and Karam took the position off of the German. So for Matt Cook, it's once again that idea of just closing that gap little by little. Last time around, Sage Karam actually had a bad lap, lost quite a lot of time, half a second to your leaders. So the leaders now are struggling, and in fact it looks as though Josh Chin may have lost the back of Joni Kynan once again, and Lucas Laville is dropping back from the third position driver as well.
Yeah, we're starting to see drivers really kind of settle in, and seeing these gaps kind of open up just a little bit, and it's going to be really interesting to see how these guys mess with the cars. Of course, you have a plethora of setup options you can play with when you come down on towards pit road to make setup adjustments. You have tire pressures and wing angle adjustments that you can change. Might play with the front wing. I doubt you'll see guys really changing that rear wing up. And then, of course, we always talk about the in-car tools in these cars, Jack. Front roll bars front and rear that these guys can adjust, stiffen, and soften to kind of alter the handling of their car. They do have the weight jacker, but I don't think you're going to be playing with that weight jacker on the road courses, and I believe they're disconnected for the road courses in the first place.
I feel like the weight jacker and messing about with the weight jacker would actually be a bad idea on the road courses. It would really unsettle the functioning of the car.
Around the 25, right ahead of your leaders.
Nice spot there, Randy. The number 25 machine. That is your.
And that's going to actually allow
Lucas
Laville. That's going to allow Lucas Laville to slip right by Josh Chin. I think Josh had to check up and get out of the way for that, and Lucas able to just squeak right through. Replay on board with the 93.
So looking on board with Josh Chin, looking back, or was looking back towards Lucasville, but looking forwards, you'll be able to see the car of Marshall Stanley stopped in the middle of the track. He's going to have to take avoiding action in just a few moments' time. There it is. Very good spot by Josh Chin at the final moments, but because he went off the track, down the inside comes Lucas Laville. Absolutely brilliant move from the Frenchman, I say, making that opportunity happen. And I think for Lucas Laville, he'll be happy with himself, getting him onto a provisional podium spot.
Yeah, he will as well. And I think Josh Chin, even though that's going to be frustrating for him, he shouldn't be too bothered overall, just with the fact that, we actually see Laville make a mistake down through the center S and off of turn 3, and Josh Chin is going to take that spot right back.
So Lucas Laville going wide through the first corner. That has allowed Josh Chin to be able to get the position back. So the battle for position 3 in this race is still very much alive. Can Lucas Laville get himself back in front? We will have to wait and see. Coming up to this double right-hander. Don't want to be too quick on the throttle through here, because you'll unsettle the car. Run yourself wide and do what Josh Chin did last time around. And this time, no Marshall Stanley sat in the middle of the track. And I have a feeling now that Josh Chin is back past, I'm not sure what Lucas Laville can do, because it looks as though Josh Chin has actually got a little bit of a gap over him now.
It definitely does, and Josh has really been able to open the gap here very quickly. Not been a great sort of lap for him the last half a lap or so after that, making that mistake. I actually think Lucas might be struggling with the handling of that car, because I mean, Josh has stretched out nearly a 7/10 of a second gap, it seems like, already, and it's only been 3/4 of a lap since he's been able to make up that space.
And all of this happening has allowed another driver to start to become into the mix for this battle, and that's Sage Karam, Andy Werner and Matt Cook. They're all working as a group now to close down the gap. As you can see, Lucas and Josh heading themselves through turn number 1. The next 3 guys, they're only now a second and a half back, Randy, and they're 3 very quick drivers. Give it another lap or 2, they're going to be within draft range of Lucas Laville in 4th position, and before you know it, we're going to have another battle for 4th position on our hands, and it's going to get lively.
Yeah, we're about to, if Lucas doesn't figure out what's going on with the car, maybe play with those row bars like we talked about and get the handling sorted out, he's going to have a very aggressive Sage Karam, Andy Werner, and Matt Cook all hounding on him, wanting to make up spots, and especially Sage, of course, one of the youngest drivers. We've seen him be very aggressive at the Indianapolis 500 in real life. He is not afraid to put that car in some precarious situations to pick up spots. So for Lucas Laville, he better get moving, or else he's going to have a very entertaining trio coming up on him.
And actually, this is something that could be interesting, especially in the ovals throughout the season, with Sage Karam, is what happens to the other guys. He's got real-world racing experience. He knows what it's like to put a car worth millions of dollars down the inside of another one that's worth millions of dollars and risk damaging the car, or even risk hurting himself. With sim racing, you don't have that factor, but for these drivers, they're actually got to be wary of the likes of Sage Karam and Hugo Hernandez, the guys who race in real life and are good at racing in real life and have credit of doing so, because they are going to have tricks up their sleeve which they might not be expecting.
Yeah, it is one of those things that you might kind of wait and see. I've always kind of said it, sim racers tend to treat each other a little bit nicer on track than you typically see in the real world. It's one of those things I've always said, that sim racers need to be able to pick up the aggression when they're running, especially on the road course side of things. It's something we've really seen come into fold the last couple of years, seen a lot more aggressive moves come out in some of the enduros and even the open wheel stuff. Whereas in real life, you're going to see moves, what are oftentimes passes that are considered dive bombs in a sim race are considered clean in real life. And when you're talking about Hugo Hernandez, like you said, he's currently running in that 10th spot, as well as Sage Karam, who's currently trying to reel in that Lucas Laville. Both of them are going to be very, very anxious and more than willing to slot that car from a little bit far back.
And well, one driver who attempted that move in today's race and it unfortunately went wrong was Robert Grosser. And he has very kindly come up by to come and say hello for the first time this season. So Robert, first of all, welcome to the RaceSpotTV booth. Unlucky start to your season. Just take us through what happened from your perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Of course, I didn't want to be here right now. I prefer to be here right after the race. Yeah, I was trying to make a move on the driver in front of me, Hugo, and I wasn't even, like, from my whole mindset, like forcing the issue or anything like this. Totally unexpected. I locked up the rears, I guess, because the rear came loose, and yeah, I'm very sorry because I also caused some damage to Hugo's car, I guess. Yeah, then I was just rejoining the track from my perspective, staying all the way to the right, being on the curb on the right side, and then there was some contact with, I think it was Cyril. I don't know what happened there exactly, but from my perspective I was all the way to the right. There was not much more I could really do. Yeah, that's what ended my race then finally.
Now, obviously, people will know you as a driver in the Classic Indycar Series. Those who have been around for a few years will know you as the 3-time champ. But of course, something which some people don't realise is that you, along with Lucas Laville, you're the organisers of this series. So 2019, a lot of big changes. Are you excited?
Excited, stressed, tensed, everything. You have no idea the stress level or excitement level just before this race was so high. Yeah, it was really difficult to focus on qualifying and all this.
And obviously, going forward in the races, you had a good qualifying today. You had a bit of a poor start, I seem to believe. Is that something that you just need to get back into the rhythm of, especially the starts in these cars?
Oh, well, yeah. First of all, maybe yeah, but also this is just the competition level up there is so high. There are only strong drivers up there. If you don't get it 100% right, you will just lose positions. So it was extreme. I mean, I was really confident based on practice. I was confident maybe to go into the top 4, top 3 in qualifying, but you see, I was like 7th, something like this. So it's incredible how strong these drivers up front are.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Robert. Good luck with the rest of the season, and I'm sure we'll catch up with you in 2 weeks' time at Motegi. And while that was all happening, Randy, I've just spotted some contact between Sage Karam and what looked like a back marker.
May have been. Think I might see a little bit of damage on that left front wing of Sage Karam, and if you take a peek, you see Andy Werner and Matt Cook reeling him in, and the pace has really dropped off of Sage Karam following that contact.
Yeah, Sage Karam looks as though he's properly struggling in the number 9 machine. This has allowed Timus and Yemu to also close the gap up. So these guys are now running as a 4-car train. You can see Lucas Laville ahead. The gap between Sage Karam and Lucas Laville is 2 seconds as Matt Cook looks to the outside into turn number 4. Not able to get the move done on Andy Werner. Good defending by the German, but that has allowed Timus and Yemi to look down the inside of Matt Cook. He's going to slot in behind for the second sector, Randy. Probably a sensible decision, especially at this point in the circuit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right with that. Is he actually, is Niemi going to lock up just a little bit? It's important to remember the 7 of Stefan Schlocker not very far behind in this fight either, says Sage Karam. Oh, and Matt Cook tries to make a move around the outside, locks it up a little bit as Andy Werner turning into the right-hand hairpin there, so very, very tight. And actually, that's going to somewhat work out just a little bit as this is going to spread this battle out. But for Sage Karam, absolutely worst time, I think, to potentially have an issue with a back marker, get a little damage on that car, because the 3 behind him have now reeled him in, and they are all bunched up. Sage could potentially fall from 5th down to 9th here if he can't pick the pace up.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be interesting to see going into turn number 1. Werner looking to the inside, but there isn't enough room, and he's not brave enough to stick a nose down the inside of the American. Matt Cook, though, still here, and it looks as though actually through that first section of corners, Sage Karam has extended the gap just a little bit. However, it seems to be hurting him through the middle sector and down the long straights. That's where he's losing time, because the aero is taking the speed away from him. You can see how quickly Werner is closing the gap to him, Randy. But as soon as you get to a corner, Karam's fine.
Yeah, that's really the situation. It seems like he's just losing that little bit of top end, and unfortunately for him, this is, I would argue, is one of the worst tracks to have that happen, because the passing opportunities are at the end of some really, really long straightaways, some of the longest straights these guys will run on the entire championship when it comes to these road courses. So some people are already running these cars trimmed out. It's actually Matt Cook a little bit wide through that hairpin. That's going to bring the 43 of a Team Ice and Yemi right up the gearbox of the 6 of Matt Cook. So Sage Karam and Andy Werner are going to be fighting it out for 5th. Cook and Ethan Yemi are going to be trying to duke it out for 7th going into turn 1.
And Karam getting an awful run off of turn number 12. Very sideways in the number 9 machine. Andy Werner in the draft, closing the gap slowly. He's going to go down to the left-hand side of the racetrack across the line. He'll actually be scored in 5th position. Easy pass for the German. Sage Karam, he drops down into 6th position. And now he's under pressure from Timo Isanyemi and Matt Cook behind, who are having their own little scrap. For Andy Werner, that was a painless pass.
Yeah, I think Sage actually kind of knew the jig was up and pretty much let that happen to a certain extent. Obviously never want to lose that spot, but I think he knew that after the bad run and the aero damage he's currently dealing with and the top speed he's lost, he just sort of cycled in. And to be honest, losing that one spot could really be a help to that 9 car, because now that he has the 26 of Andy Werner out in front of him, a car that he can pretty much draft with, that might minimize the sort of effect he's currently feeling with the top speed. That said, Matt Cook's right underneath the rear gearbox now of Sage Karam, now trying to show the nose anywhere he can on the Coanda driver.
Yeah, and it's going to get interesting once again. Can Karam get a better run? Because if he can, he's now in the draft of Andy Werner, and there's a chance that for Sage Karam he could get that position back, and it's just going to seesaw between the two. We never know. Better run for the American off of the final corner, and for Matt Cook, not sure he got the run he needed. He's still 2 tenths behind, and although he is closing, now it's 3 tenths, now it's 2 tenths. He is going to get very close to the rear of Sage Karam. He's going to look to the inside into turn number 1, keep the nose there, but he's not going to go for the move. Sensible decision by Matt Cook. He was close, but wasn't quite close enough.
Yeah, I think you're right. He didn't get that good run that he needed coming off that final corner, so the move in towards turn 1 really wasn't on. The good news is, though, for Sage Karam, with that little bit of damage, Jack, of course, even though there's no fast repairs, you can replace the front wing, and Sage actually very confident in towards turn 4 on the brakes, gets right up on the rear wing of Andy Werner. Is that it looks like it's mostly just front wing damage, and the front wings on these cars are replaceable, and they are swapped out pretty quickly. So for Sage, we have pit stops likely happening here relatively soon. He'll be able to stop on towards pit road and get that front wing pretty much swapped out. I will say, however, something we've kind of not been talking about is the situation with our race leaders. Dave Walsh in the 37 has checked out to a 3.8 second lead over Johnny Kajanen, who's currently actually only 3/10 separated from Josh Chin. So Josh in the 93 really putting the pressure on and wants that second spot back.
And while Dave Walsh is clearly showing his dominance over this race because he set the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 18.032. And for Joni Kajanen, he's clearly dropped back, but maybe Josh Chin has found a little bit in the end of this first run, a little bit more on the tyres that he's been able to find the American, and actually that's playing into his hands because, as you said, the gap has closed right up. It wasn't this close. They've still got 4 seconds back to Lucas Laville, who's sort of sitting on his lonesome at the moment while everything goes on behind with Andy Werner, Sage Karam and Matt Cook. Lucas Laville is just being left on his own to fend for himself, and that's also letting these guys get away. But however, Kajanen and Chin having a good battle and a good scrap could allow the Frenchman to close the gap once again.
And talking about gaps closing, we out of a gap that's just swapped out. The 6 of Matt Cook able to get around the 9 of Sage Karam. We'll rewind the cameras back about a minute to see how this pass was able to happen. Center your screen should be the blue number 6 machine of Matt Cook as we go in towards turn 1. Is this where Matt made the move? I think the answer is likely going to be yes. Does he confidently step down to the inside of the Senna S? Actually, no. So where does this move actually come out from Matt Cook when he gets around Sage Karam?
We will have to wait and see. It's clearly into turn number 4. It's going to be interesting to see how this move came along. He's actually already lining it up off the exit of the 3rd corner, and he actually got the move done before the braking zone. So for Matt Cook, another perfectly executed pass for the number 6 machine, and Sage Karam loses more positions. The damage is really starting to hurt him. I think he's going to be wanting to come down onto the pit lane as soon as possible to get that damage repaired. But Matt Cook, not only did he get position on the last lap, he also got the fastest lap of the race.
Yeah, Matt's really pushing it and really kind of come on strong. He's already trying to fight now with Andy Werner here as we're towards the end of this opening stint. Sage Karam defends the inside and swerves right back into the line going to turn 4. So Timo Aisanyemi getting the door shut on him every step of the way by that number 9 car in front of him. Now up in towards the double right of Ferradura, and still Aisanyemi nowhere to go as Matt Cook is tucked under the rear wing of Andy Werner.
And that is going to be an interesting battle to watch. Andy Werner still defending hard off of Matt Cook, and Werner we've seen is a good defender. We are going to be approaching the first round of pit stops, and we're now seeing these fastest laps come through as well because the track conditions have changed again. The track temperature has dropped to 38 degrees Celsius, so it's lost 10 degrees Celsius in the 20 laps or so that we've been running so far in this 71 lap race. So for these guys, there's going to be a little bit more grip on the track now, so they're going to start to be a little bit more adventurous with the car, I feel. Pull off a few more moves and really start pushing the car a bit harder, especially as we're approaching the end of this stint.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's nearly 2 p.m. sort of in the session right now here at Interlagos. So if anything, we're likely going to expect to see these track temps as the race goes on, Jack, just get cooler and cooler and cooler as Andy Werner is going to be dealing with a little bit of lap traffic, it looks like, as they head down in towards turn 4. Matt Cook's going to try to slip by as well, but won't do so as cleanly. That's going to give him just that little bit of breathing room he needs as your race leaders all dealing with lap traffic.
Yeah, and the lap traffic is really starting to play into this race as a factor now. Of course, a short lap here at Interlagos, only 1 minute 18, 1 minute 20 seconds, so the lapped cars do very quickly get swallowed up. Looks as though the pit stops are starting. The 54 and the 08 have both made their first pit stop of the race. Looking at about a 9-second pit stop for those guys as we look at your battle for second position on the track. This is between Joni Kajanen and Josh Chin. Joni Kajanen still holding off, and I wonder whether Josh Chin is just waiting until after the pit stops, Randy, get some new tyres at full tank of fuel, and he can really push then.
Well, we know that Josh Chin is one of the greatest fuel savers in the entire sim racing world. We've seen him pull off a couple fantastic feats that have helped him really make some amazing moves. We know that Sports Car Open 12 hours of Suzuka race, Team Chimera Run 1, purely off of Josh's ability to fuel save. So I wouldn't doubt for a second that Josh is basically just sitting inside under the rear wing of Jon Kaijinen, just basically sipping fuel, likely lifting early. We'll do an onboard and listen in when he gets towards that front straightaway, one of the bigger fuel save potential areas on the entire lap. But I think that's exactly what that 93 car is up to.
And as you say that, actually, Randy, I seem to remember last year there was a race which Josh Chin did in this series where he was leading for a good proportion of the race. I have a feeling it might have been mid-Ohio, and he pitted with about 10 laps to go or something. Everyone else had made 2 stops, and he did it on 1 stop.
Oh, we got a car around in front of him. Mike Gerlica.
Yeah, that's 31. Mike Gerlica having a few issues coming out of turn number 10 through turn number 11. And I think he might take the tow back to pit lane. He has indeed. So the 31 deciding that it's not worth trying to rejoin the track. Instead, he's going to take the tow. Looking back towards Josh Chin. Let's go for a lap of Interlagos. On board with the 93 and bring you RaceSpotTV fan immersion. And that lap on board with Josh Chin, especially that run up the straight, Randy, I think you'll agree with me. He's saving fuel sat behind Joni Kainen.
He definitely is. He's not pushing it really hard. He's not going full fuel save. There's a couple places he could maybe potentially be saving more. I think going into turn 4, listening to his throttle, and even the time before when we first started that onboard going into turn 1. But he's not being aggressive and really keeping pace with that 77 car of Jon Kaijinen. He's letting that seat, just lifting off the throttle when he starts to get a run going into turn 1, just saving that little bit of fuel, and that's very smart because that means that when he comes down pit road, he should in theory require a little bit of a shorter fill. Could beat that number 77 car by a second or more off of pit road and comfortably take in that second position. But that said, every little bit of patience he's taken will cost him a bit of time, and if he's going for the win at 37 at Dave Walsh has pretty much blitzed the field right now, nearly 5 seconds ahead of that 77 car.
And yeah, exactly. Dave Walsh has really just driven off into the distance, and Joni Kainen clearly doesn't have the pace to keep up with the Brit. Josh Chin, I believe, does have the pace to keep up with your leader. However, I feel like he's just going to sit behind, as you say, save fuel, have a shorter pit stop. He's got himself second position, and it's probably the easiest second position that he will pick up this year.
Yeah, you're right. It's going to be interesting to see how this pans out as they work down through the S's. And actually, something we haven't talked about, we'll take a quick peek at the actual schedule we have for you. Interlagos, Twin Ring Motegi. I believe they're running the Oval, Barber, Texas, and the Indianapolis Road Course, your first 5 races. Then you also get into some, I think, one of the standout races for this season. It's going to be that 6th round at Belle Isle, Jack. That's a new track that we've not seen a lot of these series really get to use yet. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch these guys handle a street circuit.
Well, Detroit and Belle Isle last year for the Classic Indycar Series was actually our first broadcast from that track. And It was a very interesting race. Adam Shipstone managed to take away the win in that one, and a very dominating win indeed. It was a circuit that really did throw up some surprises. Another circuit that's going to be interesting to see later on in the year. Pocono, we're going to the new smooth Pocono for a 400-mile race, one of the races in the Triple Crown. I believe Texas is the second one. The Indy 500 is the third one. We've got an accident. We've got Sage Karam, and we've got, I believe, Randy Shoemake involved.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Oh,
yes,
and a big
indeed.
secondary incident, a huge secondary incident.
Sage Karam looks as though he might be on his roll hoop. Replay up on your screen. Sage Karam looks to go around the outside of Randy Shoemake through turn number 3. Pass was successful. Moves to the inside to defend. Now that shouldn't be something that he needs to defend unless he's had issues, and drop back to the inside of turn 4. He goes very deep on the brakes. Running wide. Is there contact as he came across the track? Yes, there was. Big contact for the number 4. The number 9 goes round Karam. And there was obviously the secondary contact as well, where he ended up on his roll hoop.
Yeah, we're trying to see what happened here. He's backing up and, oh, just traffic coming through. I'm trying to see who was that red car that got into him. It was Matt Molnar. We're going to rewind these cameras back a little bit because that angle is hard to see and really put blame anywhere, whether or not Molnar needed to check up or if Sage was sort of moving around on the racetrack. We'll take a peek, though, as watch off of turn 4 what happens with Matt Molnar. It's hard now on the brakes. And in towards turn 4, and you're going to see a bright pink and white and orange Sage Karam pretty much right there. And oh, that's hard to, I think Sage just moving around on the racing surface like that, Jack, is not something you can do. I think that was somewhat caused by the 9 car, likely frustrated following the incident, but he's pretty much blocking the entire track, being perpendicular to the direction of travel.
It was a very, as you say, an unpredictable move by Sage Karam, and he is now done for the day. So for Sage Karam on his debut in the Classic IndyCar Series, ending up after just 25 laps on his roll hoop and upside down. And I think that's got a shame for him. But it's also then going to take away some of the competition for the guys ahead. Looking back towards this battle for second position, where Josh Chin is just trailing Joni Kynan and still trailing. However, these two, they're pulling away from Lucas Levin.
Yeah, they are. They really are working together and have really stretched the gap on the 2 and the 6 and Andy Werner as well. And you know, that is the sort of bunch that the 9 car Sage Karam was. And keep in mind, we kind of missed it initially. The reason Sage Karam was back fighting with the 4 of Randy Shoemake, Sage had made his first pit stop, so the pit window is pretty much open. Sage, one of the race leaders, coming down on towards pit road. That's going to pretty much open the floodgates, I think, in the next couple laps. We're likely going to see all these guys come down pit road. I want to see the 93 car, of course, Josh Chin. We know that he's fuel saving a bit. How much later does he go, or does he try to come down with everyone else?
Josh Chin's into the pits on this lap, so he's going to go early, try and get the undercut on Joni Kynan. This is going to be an interesting pit stop to see how long it really is. We're looking at pit stops anywhere between 9 and 11 seconds, so Josh Chin, he's going to be bringing himself onto his pit stall right at the end of pit lane, stationary about now. Up onto the jacks he goes. Tyres, so new tyres for the number 93. Full tank of fuel, Randy, and he'll be back out and away. That is a 9-second pit stop, so it's going to be interesting to see what Joni Kynan does going 1 lap longer.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch and see indeed. A little bit, of course, if he is fuel saving, he'll have a shorter stop, and of course, like you said, he comes down a little bit earlier. I heard a car spinning out of Fuerteventura trying to find where it was. I definitely heard tires squealing somewhere. I've not been able to find out. Maybe been somewhere else on the racetrack. Actually, maybe Matt Cook, who just locks up going into the right-hander. So maybe a little bit of drama somewhere else on the racetrack as we're going to take a peek. But clouds start coming over the racetrack once again. Lap times expect to be fast for the guys out there on new tires.
Yeah, track temperature did raise just a little bit over the last few laps. However, it is dropping once again with the clouds coming back over. Joni Kynan is going to stay out for 1 more lap. So he's going on to his 27th lap of his stint, or 28th lap of his stint, sorry, in the number 77 machine. And so is Dave Walsh. For Josh Chin, he is back out and away, but he is a good 25 seconds down on second position, Randy. and that's how long he spent in pit lane. It's going to be very close between these two guys after this round of pit stops.
Yeah, it definitely is, and one of the things to keep in mind is that it's a relatively short pit road here and really, really quick pit stops, so you're not going to really lose that much time over the course of the strategy you decide to go with in terms of when you come down pit road. But now we, like you said, keep an eye on the 37, keep an eye on the 77 of when they are going to come down pit road. And of course, these other drivers, the like of Lucas LaVille, Matt Cook, Andy Werner, we've been seeing these guys have fun fights all race long. They've got a little bit spread out now for the fight for the top 5, though.
Let's get a little bit of love to the midfield. Joseph Ringrose and Jan Hoffman, they are having a battle for the last position in the top 10. Jan Hoffman, of course, the latter end of last year, joining Logykal Vortex Sim Racing. Joe Ringrose behind the team manager of VRT E-Racing, who are taking part in the Neo 24 Hours of Le Mans next weekend. We got a car around. The number 2 car has stopped. Lucas LaVille has spun coming out of turn number 12 as Dave Walsh brings himself down onto the pit lane. So Lucas now hitting trouble. Was there contact? Let's find out.
We're about to see what happened to this 2 machine in toward the final couple of sectors on the racetrack, and going now down the fast sort of downhill left-hander. Lucas LaVille up towards Logykal. I think it's a mistake all on his own. I think he just gets too aggressive trying to turn in, Jack, and pretty much just loses that rear end. No damage, it looks like, but just time lost.
So, Joni Kynan from second position has come down to the pit lane, and past goes Josh Chin. Josh Chin, you can't even see on your screens at the moment because he's already on the exit of turn number 3. Kynan had a 12-second stop, Brandy, which means that Josh Chin has come out with an advantage of over 2 seconds.
Yeah, pretty much 2 seconds exactly. Dave Walsh did actually a very similar pit stop time to Josh Chin, so this might actually come full circle for Joni Kynan in that number 77, because what we've seen for the race leader and from Josh Chin are very similar strategies of roughly 9-second pit stops. With Kynan going that extra couple seconds, he likely just filled that car right up to the top, which is going to mean that he can potentially go longer this middle stint and could have a very short stop coming off the end of the race into that final stint. We're going to have to wait and see how this works out. The 77 car may be setting himself up for a very short final run on new tires and light fuel.
Yeah, and that's going to be interesting to watch, those final 20 laps or so. Of course, we're only on lap 30 of 71 now, ladies and gentlemen. So still a long, long way to run in this race. 42 laps to go. Matt Cook's on pit lane. Timo Siniemi's on pit lane. Lucas LaVille is on pit lane. So all of your front runners now making their first stop. Josh Chin, Joni Kynan, they've cycled themselves back to...
Andy Werner stays out.
Andy Werner does stay out. So Werner has stayed out for another lap. He is going to go on to... Oh, no, Andy Werner's already pitted.
Has he already... Oh, yeah, you're right. He just came out. You're right. It's actually really weird trying to actually pick up the actual in-laps, because with this layout, for those who are unaware, you get to pit entry is so close to start finish that it really doesn't affect the lap time. So his in-lap just kind of blended in on the timing sheet. So my fault there.
Yeah, I had a quick look at my timing screens to see that he had brought himself down onto pit lane, and he's now putting the pressure onto Matt Cook, who has also made his pit stop. So Andy Werner and Matt Cook, this battle was all of a sudden got very, very excited between the 6 and the 26. And actually, I'm not sure whether Matt Cook has been able to jump Andy Werner in the pit lane.
Yeah, it seems like that is what happened, but it's not by very much, as that 26 car has the 6 of Matt Cook right out in front of him as they run now down the downhill left-hander and up towards Young South for what will be the 30th time this race. So very close between these two. They're going to head down your front stretch.
And as we hit this first round of pit stops, it seems just about the right time to take you through the standings of your race so far. Race leader, currently the number 37 machine. He's led from the start, led all the way through almost every single lap of the race, and that is, of course, the Brit Dave Walsh. Josh Chin was able to get a little bit of a jump on Joni Kynan to get second, who is currently in third. Matt Cook in fourth, Andy Werner in fifth. Timo Siniemi sixth. Lucas LaVille has dropped back to seventh after his issue in Logykal just a couple of laps ago. Hugo Hernandez, who we've talked about a couple of times, had a bit of a quiet race so far today, up one position in 8th. Stefan Schlager in 9th. Johnny Garrett having a brilliant race, currently up in 10th position. However, he has indeed pitted, so he is very looking strong at the moment. Cyril Gitzhofer, Jan Hoffman, Joseph Ringrose, Daniel Schoolmeister and Sasha Lamp will round out the top 15 of your standings currently. And we are going to take you for another lap on board of Interlagos, but this time with your leader, Dave Walsh. RaceSpotTV fan immersion coming your way. Welcome back to the Classic IndyCar Series, round number 1 for 2019 on the iRacing Esports Network. Every race going to be brought to you by RaceSpotTV on this very channel. I am Jack Stiles, alongside me is Randy Chenoweth, as we approach the halfway stage of the 71-lap race here at Interlagos for round number 1. Currently, Dave Walsh, who you've just had a couple of laps on board with, leading the way in this one. But one thing I have been watching over the last couple of laps, Randy, is this gap between Logykal and Josh Chin with the traffic is a little bit fluctuating, and it has been as close as a second.
Yeah, it really is, and it's kind of going back and forth, back and forth. Matter of fact, we saw Jon Kijkanen bring in 1.7 seconds in a single lap on lap 32, but that's going to kind of come and it'll ebb and flow with this lap traffic, as we've seen a couple laps as well, where lap 31 and lap 33, Josh was able to reel out about 8 or 9 tenths. So that said, they're starting to get through the bulk of the traffic here, Jack. So for both of them, they're going to have clear track shortly. Josh already has it.
Yeah, Josh has it. There's a couple of cars ahead of him, probably about 5-6 seconds up the road, which Dave Walsh is currently dealing with. But for Logykal, he still has one more driver to navigate. That is the number 12 machine of Andrew Adair Saunders, who's just going to stick to the right-hand side through the first corner. Sensible move by the German. And past he goes. Looking at the driver, very briefly, the driver Matt Cook back towards the number 77.
Yeah, that's my bad. I misclicked.
Yeah, that's funny. And for the number 77, it's just a case of now running this longer stint, as you said, Randy. These drivers have only got one more stop to make, and it's going to be in the very final stages of the race. So the later you can make that stop, the better, because the less fuel you have to take and the lighter your car will be, the shorter a pit stop you're going to be in a better position whatever happens.
Well, it's not necessarily that simple, of course. It's going to all depend. How much fuel you take in the final stop will all depend on how much fuel you took in that last stop. We know a couple of drivers short-filled. Josh Shin, I think, took on a full tank of fuel, but remember, he came down pit road 3 to 4 laps earlier than everyone else, so he also wasn't filling from an empty tank. So I think he likely filled up, but didn't need as much to get filled up when he came down pit road. Compare that to the 77 of Joan Kaijinen, and he went pretty much longer than anyone else of your race leaders, except for maybe 1 or 2 other drivers, and he took on a full tank of fuel, had the longest fill time of anybody by a couple of seconds. So I think right now the 77 car has set himself up likely for the best final stint of all, but he's going to be giving it up through this middle one. So what we need to see happen right now is, if you're Josh Chin, you need to open this gap up as large as you can, because Joan Kaijinen is going to set himself up to come down pit road likely as late as possible, have a really light tank of fuel, and get that on new tires and just try to run as close to qualifying laps as he can.
And a battle that we looked at just before we went away for a few laps of fan immersion and before Sage Karam decided to have his incidents was the battle for 10th position, and it seems to be getting exciting again. Cyril Gitzhofer, Jan Hoffman and Joseph Ringrose getting involved in this one. Ringrose in 12th has just dropped off the back of it just a little bit, Randy, but Hoffman and Gitzhofer last time around very equal lap times. We'll see what the lap times are like this time around as they come across the timing strike. Once again, very similar. So actually for these two drivers, they're running pretty much identical lap times. All it's going to take is for one of them to make the tiniest mistake, and Jan Hoffman can get himself up into the top 10.
Yeah, really this entire trio of Cyril, Hoffman, and Ringrose are all kind of just matching each other tit for tat here, and it's basically one of them will reel in, and then that driver might make a mistake, or the other two might just find a little bit of time in the lap, and you know, it's a very close fight for the top 10. It's close enough that drivers are, you know, if you're Jan Hoffman, you're both looking out at Cyril and Joseph Ringrose, and if you're Cyril, you're having to keep track of both Jan and Joseph in the rearview mirror. But it's not at the same time close enough to where you're having to really worry about a driver shoving the nose everywhere. They're just far enough away to where you can really consider yourself having clean track and can kind of just comfortably lap at the moment.
And of course, Joe Ringrose, a name which is new to the Classic IndyCar Series for this year, making his debut today here at Interlagos, but he's not afraid of these single-seater cars. A driver who I know for a fact was going to go for the F1 World Championship if it ran again this year. Unfortunately, obviously, it's been replaced by the Porsche World Championship. The qualifiers wrapped up just a couple of weeks ago. So Joe Ringrose, he's finding a new home in the Classic IndyCar Series. 12th position on his debut. Halfway into the race, he's having a pretty good run today.
Yeah, I think this is actually be something we might see that might become somewhat popular here, Jack, because a lot of those guys who ran in that were really going for that World Championship Grand Prix Series, they really don't have any other way to get their open wheel fixed beyond the F3 car. And for really major series, these IndyCars leagues tend to be sort of the biggest thing there is, I think, at least in my opinion, compared to some of the series that are running the F3 or, you know, the Formula Renaults and whatnot. So a lot of guys that were initially putting a lot of focus into that McLaren MP430, trying to get themselves into that World Championship Grand Prix Series, that now folds, and I think we're going to see an influx of talent into the likes of this Classic IndyCar Series, as well as other series running throughout on iRacing, running the likes of the Dallara IR18 or maybe even the DW12 if there's a couple series running that, simply for the simple fact that there's no other way for them to get their championship fix in the open wheel cars. So it's going to be really fun watching these guys duke it out with drivers they've never raced with before and cars they've never maybe raced as much before. And oh yeah, when we eventually get to the ovals in Indy 500, maybe see some new names taking part there as well.
And of course, iRacing does have the latest 3 generations of the IndyCar, the IR05, which you're seeing on your screens today, the DW12 and the IR18. They are all on the service. And the IR05, it's its own little beast. It really is. It doesn't have any of the contraptions that the newer cars do. No traction control, no ABS. It's all about the driver. And that really is what people enjoy driving about this car. Of course, people talk about the 9,000 RPM kill switch as we see Joseph Ringrose looking for a move on Jan Hoffman. And actually, we have seen that a couple of times today with a couple of the spins, Randy. You do have to be careful on the throttle in this car, especially out of the slower corners.
Yeah, you do. It's one of the really sketchy things about this car is it likes to spin up those rear tires. A lot of people aren't actually aware, but this initial Indy car, the Dallara IR05, that ran from 2005 as its namesake up to 2012 before it was replaced by that DW12. This was initially an oval-only car when it was built. It was never supposed to run on road courses. However, this is a car that was sort of around when the IndyCar American Open Wheel merger came together, when IndyCar became one series instead of being two after the end of Champ Car and Kart. And it really kind of did a very good job filling the role, being able to run on the road courses. It's a little bit heavier than some of the other cars, has a little bit more power, but it made for very, very good racing. And I think was an amazing sort of stepping stone car for American Open Wheel racing at the time, coming in with the end of Kart and coming into the now IndyCar era that we have now and have been enjoying for about the last 15 years.
And of course, with IndyCar, we're actually seeing a lot of drivers now who have been in Formula One, who have been in high-level racing in Europe, switch over to this. Marcus Ericsson, of course, switching from Formula One to IndyCar this year with Schmidt-Peterson, and we've seen drivers do it every single year.
Lest we forget Alonso.
Yeah, of course, Fernando Alonso running the Indy 500 2 years ago, and again this year. Robert Wickens last year jumping from Mercedes DTM program over to Schmidt-Peterson with IndyCar. It is becoming a more and more popular series, and I think that is brilliant to see that the drivers are embracing it, especially with the IR18. It really has changed how that series runs.
Yeah, IndyCar has really become a big series in its own and is really starting to gain international following, and it's really great to see that, especially over in Europe. I'd love to see some race happen in Europe with the Indy cars, maybe run somewhere where the Formula One circuit doesn't do so anymore. I know classically CART has run at Zolder, but I've always kind of said that I don't think Zolder is really a great open wheel track. Maybe they can find somewhere that they can run in Europe that currently doesn't get any running. Of course, Brands Hatch had a circuit that was used as well in IndyCar, Brands Hatch Indy, but I'd rather see them on the Grand Prix layout, to be honest. Somewhere in Europe, I'm sure IndyCar can find some way, somehow, to get themselves over there for at least one time a season.
And well, of course, it was, I believe it was CART that came over to Europe in the early 2000s, running on the Rockingham Motor Speedway and, of course, at Brands Hatch in the UK.
Also ran the loudest ring. That's where Zanardi got into his crash, which saw him lose his legs.
Yes, obviously the German circuit, not really used much more other than ADAC GT Masters and DTM now. Oval racing in Europe never really kicked off. They tried with Rockingham, but of course, unfortunately, Rockingham closed at the tail end of last year, held its final event, and is now destined to become, I believe it's a housing estate.
Yeah, a bit of a bummer. That's basically what happens to a lot of motor racing circuits, but you're right. Oval racing just never seemed to kind of get the sort of the following in the UK and in Europe that we really have here in the United States. There's a lot of, I think, reasons we could go on for that I think are very good reasons for why that doesn't work. Basically boils down to just the size of it. You look at the UK, you guys are basically the size of Texas compared to what we're dealing with here in the US, where Texas is the size of Texas, and then there's 47 more of us in the continental US. But just keeping tabs on the racing as well. Josh Chin doing a fantastic job opening the gap over the 77 of Johan Kajanen. 5.3 seconds between the two of them now, and Josh is consistently opening up a quarter to half a second every single lap.
And I wonder whether because either Josh Chin is running slightly lighter fuel loads in his car, or whether it is simply a case of he's found a little bit more pace. The track temperature is slowly coming down. His setup could be working all of a sudden. Obviously, with the setup, you might lose it if it's a degree too hot on the track. The setup doesn't work as well. So for Josh Chin, all of a sudden, his car must be switching on because he's just done the fastest lap of the race, and he's just gone 2/10 faster than Matt Kirk, who previously held it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely might be that situation, drivers maybe knowing what the track temperature is going to do. That's one of the big things. A lot of people really were kind of underselling what this sort of adapted track temperature is going to be like. I've talked about it a lot in peak and how that's going to change those races, particularly when we go from daytime to night racing in those. But really knowing how to set your car up for a longer race that's going to run a couple, kind of like sort of this one, an hour and a half, 2 hours. If you know that track's going to lose temperature over the course of the run, really setting that car car up to be strong maybe through the second half rather than the first half is actually going to be a really big thing, and we're going to see that in the endurance races as well, I think, over the next year as drivers really start to learn how the cars react and how they respond to the different weather aspects. I think it's really going to change how the drivers have to set those cars up, how you manage your tire pressures, and what changes you make to the car when you eventually come down pit road. Because in the past, you really weren't changing anything. Maybe your tire pressure is all the way around half a click there, or a click, a half a PSI or so once or twice during the race. But now, when you're talking about the sort of temperature shifts that we're going to be seeing in some of these 12 and 24-hour races of track temperatures dropping 30, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, you're going to see a huge change in how these cars handle those changes and what the drivers and teams have to do to keep them underneath them.
And we've just had a change for 10th position. Jan Hoffman was able to get himself past the driver of Cyril Gitshoffer.
Oh, Dave Walsh. Josh Chin has taken the race lead. What has happened at 37? An incident down in turn 4. He's back out there on track and running, but Josh Chin just slipped to the point.
And for Dave Walsh, replay up on your screen now, ladies and gentlemen, into turn number 4. He comes. I think he just loses the rear end. A little bit of curb. Running wide. A little bit too much power. And he's round. And with that, Dave Walsh has crashed out of the lead, quite literally, and Josh Chin up into the race lead. So that pit strategy move that he had, or that he got on Logykal just a few laps ago in those pit stops, Randy, now paying off and putting him on the top step of the podium.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic situation if you're Josh Chin right now. Get a complete freebie to pick up a spot over Dave Walsh, and now Dave is going to be out there on hot tires after that spin. It's going to take him a couple laps to get the temps down and maybe even go to reeling Josh Chin. You see him lock the left front going into turn 1. So inside of 30 laps to go. And keep in mind, Dave Walsh and Josh Chin were on the same fuel strategy. Dave went a little bit longer in the opening stint, but he'd put in a similar fuel load and maybe a little bit heavier, but not by much, than what Josh did. About 9 seconds between the two of them. So we're likely going to see these guys come down pit road. Dave likely, because he went with that on that opening pit stop, not going to have the sort of flexibility to likely change for that and come down any earlier or maybe even any later than Josh can to maybe try to really shake things up. So for the 37, he's got to do it all on pace. But if I were him, I'd try to come down early and get off of those tires that have had that spin now.
And I think for Dave Walsh as well, something that's going to be very important to watch over the next few laps. Of course, it's not a big lead that Josh Chin has. It's only about 2.5 seconds. And we know that Dave Walsh has just been driving off and leaving the guys behind in the lead. He's been dominant so far. That one mistake has handed it to Josh Chin. However, Josh Chin is really going to have to fight for this one to know that he is going to be in the lead come the end of this race.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I want to keep an eye on the lap times for these drivers here. Josh goes to a 1:18.3. Dave Walsh, his first hot lap back out there on these hot tires now, 18.1. So the gap comes down by a couple tenths, and Joni Kaijin goes to an 18.5. So he's not able to take advantage of anything either. So it's Josh Chin and Dave Walsh that looks like will likely be the challenge here as they work themselves in towards turn 4. And Dave is now going to be a man on the mission. He's not going. I don't think he's going to have the time to reel Josh in before the next round of pit stops, as we're likely going to be seeing that in the next couple laps. Josh's first pit stop of this race, of course, came on lap number 26. So likely in the next 6 to 7 laps at the latest is probably when we'll see everyone down and on the lane.
And I think actually 26 laps remaining in this race. These guys are already 16, 18 laps into their stint. They're probably going to cut this one in half, I reckon, so that you run new tyres for half and half of the stint. Or you could go for the strategy that you said earlier on, Randy, and run short tyres for a very short stint. However, you then run the risk of having a pit stop where it's longer taking the tyres than it is actually fueling the car, in which case you're losing time.
Yeah, that is one of the things you definitely want to, you want to try to get to the point where the fuel is done just as the tires are done. That's what you're kind of shooting for, but at the same time, it's one of those, it always is rewarding to be out there on as light as fuel as you can on new tires, but as well at the same time, you have to give yourself enough time to actually make that up to be an advantage, about 10 to 15 laps. So I don't think anyone's going to go super short. I think about 15 laps would be the absolute shortest anyone would want to go. I think we're likely going to see everyone down and in the next couple, though.
Yeah, obviously some of these drivers, especially Josh Chin, reaching 20 laps in this stint. There's some guys in the midfield reaching 25 laps they really are going to be the guys who will be coming down onto pit lane first. It's going to be interesting to see as well. Josh Chin, last time around, was 3/10 quicker than Dave Walsh. So for Dave Walsh, he was able to actually lost a little bit of time to the leader. So Josh Chin now, the battle for the lead, 3 seconds. Currently on your screen, the battle for position number 10. This is between Jan Hoffman and Joe Ringrose. So something has happened to Gitzhofer to drop behind and allow Ringrose to close the gap again.
Yeah, a little mistake it looks like from Cyril as he's dropped off the back now. Or maybe it's just, he's actually going to come down pit road right now, so the window seems to be opened up as he's, I think, going to be the first one to really pull that trigger. But it's been about a 10 or so laps since we've really followed these guys. Might have just been him losing the touch of the rear of that 19 car over the course of that period. But Joseph Ringrose doing a good job trying to get in towards this top 10 in the closing stages of this one as they're approaching the final 20 laps.
And it's going to be a very interesting final 20 laps. Some drivers have already started to pit, as you said. Gitzhofer's pitted, Schulmeister has pitted, Stefan Schlager has also taken his second pit stop of the race. Looks as though Jos van der Ven down in 19th has also done a very similar thing. So pit stops starting to trickle through. And last time around, once again, Josh Chin really on the charge to keep this lead, Randy, because he set another fastest lap of the race.
Yeah, he's pushing hard, and that's what you're going to expect to see from Josh now. He's been gifted the lead, and I think he's likely pushing harder now than he would have with Dave being out there 2 to 3 seconds up in front of him. I think Josh is wanting to now open up that gap, sees he has a very real possibility that he's been gifted this race, whereas I think trying to reel Dave in was not going to be nearly as much of a factor, I don't think. But still, Josh doing everything he can, getting caught up with some lap traffic, couple cars out there in front of him. I believe one of them might be the 7 car. Who's currently out in front of him, maybe actually be Josh Baird as well. But these guys doing everything he can. And Josh is down on towards pit road. Dave, we know, is on a similar strategy, and he's going to stay out.
So Dave Walsh goes one longer, maybe try and get a good in lap as opposed to Josh Chin. But Chin, an 18.6 on an in lap compared to Dave Walsh's 18 flat is pretty good. So Josh Chin clearly trying not to lose much time. Matt Cook, however, is looking fast, sitting in his fastest lap of the race so far, Randy. He's currently now sitting in 3rd position with all the pit stops going on. So Josh Chin has completed his final pit stop. 10 seconds it's showing on my timing screens.
Oh, he spins! He spins on the pit exit!
Josh Chin! No! No.
Hashtag blame Randy in effect. You can see it right there in the center of your screen. And what happens to Josh? I think he just spins up the rear tires in this Dallara IR05 through the right-hander. No, he clips the gas. He clips the grass on the left-hand side. Absolute nightmare situation for Josh. After everything that's been panning out, he, in one of the worst ways he can, that race comes to an end. I thought he may have spun the tires up on the rear, as the rear tires on the R05, when they're new, it is very easy to spin them up, especially through that right-hand kink exiting pit road. But no, just clips the grass on the left-hand side, and that's race done for Josh.
Oh, honestly, I don't know what to say. Josh Chin, a driver who is, yeah, other than rip or blame Randy, there's not much more I can really say to that. And I feel really bad for Josh now. He was having a cracking run up with the front of the field, but that has now handed the leads not only back to Dave Walsh before his pit stop, but back to Dave Walsh after his pit stop.
Yeah, that's... I mean, how does that feel if you're the 37 car of Dave Walsh? You're in the middle of you're coming to the end of your kind of middle stint, and you actually make a mistake that gives up the race lead to someone like Josh Chin. You're likely thinking, I've just thrown this race away, and then you get it gifted right back. Absolutely. I mean, what a situation for Dave to be in.
I have a feeling Dave Walsh is currently doing small little jumps in his car of joy after seeing that on his relative and his timing screens. And Josh Chin, he's just falling back through the field, and that is going to be day over for him because, of course, we said it earlier on, I'm going to say it again, 2019 in this series means that there is no fast repair. So these drivers do not have a second chance if anything happens. So Dave Walsh staying out for one more. So he's going on to his 22nd lap of the stint with 22 laps remaining. I have a feeling that Dave Walsh might split this one in half, Randy, and actually go for a half and half stint.
Yeah, if Dave has a spotter of some sort or even if he's paying attention, if he has his relative black box up, he should see that he either should know that Josh was in an incident, or he should have, you know, because of a spotter telling him so, or if he's been coming through the front straightaway, he should see on his black box that Josh is still on pit road and know that he's really fighting with that 77 car behind him now. So to a certain extent, I think Dave's been given such a big lead that it doesn't really matter the strategy that he's on. He could go as long as he wants now, he could go as short as he wants now and make this final run a little bit long or make it a little bit short. I think it really doesn't matter at this point. It's just going to take a big mistake from Dave Walsh for him to potentially be able to lose this race.
And while the battle for 8th position, this is still between Joseph Ringrose and Jan Hoffman. Of course, they've been bumped up the standings just a little bit by the pit stops that we are seeing.
And they've been flipped around too
at the moment. So yes, they have also been flipped around. So Joe Ringrose was able to get past Jan Hoffman at some point in the last few laps, but I haven't seen Jan Hoffman actually drop off the back of Ringrose yet. So it's still very much alive, and I think this one could be a very interesting race when it comes down to the pit stops.
Yeah, and they are still fighting with Cyril. Keep that in mind. Glitzhofer is still technically part of this battle. He already came down on towards pit road and made his stop. What do you see?
Matt Cook, he's pitted, but he pitted and crossed the line. I think he was too quick coming into the pit lane. I think Matt Cook has got himself a speeding penalty.
We're about to find out.
He crossed the pit lane speed limit line at 121 kilometers an hour, and pit speed here is 70.
We're about to see 9 seconds is what we've been seeing, and it's a long stop for Matt Cook. Great spot there, Jack. He's going to be there for about 10 to 15 seconds longer than he normally would have. Huge mistakes coming from everyone at the end of this thing.
So the front runners, the drivers who we expect to see pulling out brilliant races start to finish, no mistakes, are actually the drivers who were struggling the most here today, by it seems, Randy. And even in the last few laps, we've seen Josh Chin hit the pit wall. We've seen Matt Cook pick up a speeding penalty. He's still stationary. He's only got going again. Oh no, pardon me. 24 seconds he spent in his box. So yes, 15-second stop and hold for Matt Cook for speeding in the pit lane as Jan Hoffman pits from 9th position.
Yeah, so Hoffman's going to come down pit road. Ringrose stays out. So a little bit of different strategy here. Let's see actually where Cyril goes. We're going to follow Cyril Glitzhofer. We know that he was part of that fight with Joseph Ringrose and Jan Hoffman. Let's see where he is in regards to that 05 of Jan Hoffman. He's been out there on new tires, but the other two would have had a slightly lighter car, pushing their pit stop a little bit later. Let's see, where is Hoffman? He's rolling off of pit road, heading down the back straightaway. Cyril Glitzhofer in towards turn 1 now. That 54 car did not make up any spots with that early pit stop strategy.
Yes, so the 54 losing just that little bit of time that's going to be important as Jan Hoffman heads himself into turn number 4 and Glitzhofer not even at the braking zone yet. So for that driver, that battle is going to be very interesting. Joe Ringrose, though, I think this is someone we need to keep an eye on over the next couple of laps, Randy, because we did see a good battle between himself and Jan Hoffman. And if there's any difference in pit times that brings them even closer, it's going to make it even more interesting.
Yeah, you're right. It's going to be interesting to see when Ringrose actually comes down pit road here. We've also had your race leader come on and off of pit road now. Now it's just really Johan Kajsen and Andy Werner, the two leaders who've yet to pit. And Ringrose is going to stay out and go another one. See one driver peeling on towards pit road as well near. I'm not sure who that was. May have been lap traffic. But the 19 car inside. Oh, we got a car stopped on the exit of turn 1. That's going to be Carson Brodry running 26. And in the middle of the Senna S, he actually finds a nice clean bit of track to remerge himself. Likely just a self spin as I see no damage on that car. But we'll take a quick replay to take a peek.
So Carsten Brodry running a long way down the order, down in 26th position. There's quite a lot of damage actually on that car, so we're going to join the replay as he's heading off of Logykal to turn number 12, up through this long uphill section, Randy, past the pit exit, so he obviously stays out, which is fair enough. Through into turn 1. I wonder whether he just lost it on his own because no one's around him.
I think that's exactly what happened. I will say, I don't know how he would have spun there if he hadn't have stayed out because of the wall. But yeah, just a self-spin. And he was actually stuck here for a while. For about 30 seconds, I think he was waiting for clean track. Maybe fighting a little bit with the anti-stall, not sure. He had actually more than enough time, more than enough room that I think he could have been more aggressive, really pushing out onto the racing surface. But I think he simply just didn't want to, or just wanted to be careful. We've seen a couple mistakes today from some unsafe rejoins, so I will say I'll give props to him giving up a little bit of time lost, making sure to not pull out in front of drivers on the racing surface.
Yeah, good decision made there by Carson Bromley, not getting in anyone's way. Currently looking at Andy Werner. He's made his pit stop 9.4 seconds on the lane, and he has returned to the racing surface in 5th position. There's still some drivers yet to pit, so everyone ahead. Joni Kynan is yet to pit, so is Lucas Laville and Timo Isanyemi. Joni Kynan has stayed out, so he's actually going really long into this one, Randy, and going to go for a really short final stint.
Yeah, that definitely seems to be the way he's going to play this one out as we approach the final 15 laps of this one. Lap 55 and 71, setting us up for 61 to go. And this is one of those things, though, Jack, I kind of talked about it. It's okay to set yourself up for a light final run, but you need enough time to make that sort of workout and be able to catch the cars in front of you. As late as he's holding it, I don't know if he's going to have enough time to really make that work.
I mean, there's a few drivers up and down the field I'm seeing who are going for the late, short final pit stop and the final run to the checkered flag. I'm looking at Joni Kynan's doing it. Lucas Laville and Timo Isanyemi are about a lap shorter of Joni Kynan. Hugo Hernandez is on his 25th lap of the stint, and Joe Ringrose looks to be staying out for another lap of this circuit. So this time around, Joni Kynan is going to stay out again, so he's going for another lap. 27 laps on this stint is basically going to be his run. And well, Randy, you found a certain Josh Chin.
Yep, I have him, driver himself. Josh, you have anything to say except blame Randy?
Blame Randy, blame cold tires, and blame a lack of practice.
Well, it wasn't just the tires. You actually clipped the grass.
Yeah, it was very slightly, but cold tires, and I just understeered out and clipped the grass, and it was all over from there.
We've been sort of talking about that. The R05, as I have nearly as much experience with it as you do, we've been talking about pretty much how sketchy it can be on the cold tires. How has it been with the fact that the track temperature is constantly getting colder this entire race? Did the car any sketchier after the first stint than it was after after the first pit stop than it was after the start of the race when you've been on cold tires as well?
No, actually, after the first stop, the car felt really good. I was really flying, trying to catch up to Dave, and had an incident happen. Tires got a little too cold and split, and lost about 2 seconds total on a lap. But the car felt great. I did a mid-17, just trying to catch him down, and then Dave made his mistake, and it looked like game on from there.
All right, well, Josh, well done, let's say, on the showing you had here today, keeping up the Team Chimera tradition of wrecking somewhere near the pit exit, as I have done as well as at Indianapolis, as well as at Le Mans. Before we let you go, who gets it done for that Team Chimera machine?
I got to give thanks to Jamie, who was calling strategy, and I think we were in a really good spot, especially after Dave had his incident. You know, I think the way it looks now, we probably would have jumped him on traffic a little bit after this stop, but did a great job with strategy. Everyone in Team Chimera for the support, except for you. You don't do anything anymore.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, you don't do. Do you do anything at all now? Is this just like a side gig?
I build BMW setups for Jamie to race.
Do they bounce all over the place like a Mercedes setup though?
No, I haven't broken one of our setups just yet.
Yeah, you need to.
To be fair, I don't want to make that BMW move around like that because it's such a thick mate that it probably shake the universe apart.
Well, I mean, there's already earthquakes in California, so.
This is true, and I know that was a shot at me, and at that, I will just casually drag you out of the TeamSpeak channel. So thank you, Josh, for joining us and bantering just a little bit. With 15 laps to go, Joni Kynan is on pit road.
Yeah, I was wondering how late he was going to leave that pit stop, and he's finally decided that now is the time to bring himself onto pit lane to get the service. That tank must be almost dry now for Joni Kynan, so he's going to stop. I don't know whether he's actually going to get any tires on that car. Yes, he has. It does look as though he's gone up on the jacks. Not long after it's been done, he's going to bring himself back out onto pit lane. 8-second pit stop, the shortest I've seen all race for him. And Dave Walsh has reimbursed or retaken the lead, but it's only by about 2 seconds. over the driver of Logykal.
It was a full 8.5 seconds. The two of Lucas Seville, though, he maybe want to take advantage of this, and he has slowly crept his way up in that 2 car to a second place running position. So the 77 car, a short pit stop, but he cannot hold on to that second position, and he now has 15 laps to not only pass Dave Walsh and catch even Dave Walsh, but he has to deal with the 2 of Lucas Seville as well.
Well, Laville is going to be getting out of his way in not too long, because Laville has still got to stop a second time. So is Timo Isinghemi, so is Joe Ringrose, the only drivers left to make that final pit stop. Expect them to be doing it in the next couple of laps, because they are very, very deep into their stint. 28, 29 laps. I have a feeling Joe Ringrose, he's gone for a 29th lap on this stint, Randy. I wonder whether he's actually left it too late, and he could run the risk of running out of fuel.
He very well might. I think that he likely won't, but we'll have to wait and see what happens to this 19 car. But he's actually, I think I like the situation he's in, Jack, because the situation he was in was Jan Hoffman and Cyril Gitzhofer. They were already bunched together. The problem that I have with Logykal is that he had to be able to catch the likes of Dave Walsh. So I like for the 19 car pushing this late, knowing that he's likely going to come off pit road very bunched up with his competitors on fresh tires on a super light tank of fuel. That's going to give, I think, Joseph Ringrose a huge advantage going forward in that fight when he eventually peels off on towards pit road.
And I have a feeling it's going to be this lap that he's going to peel himself off onto pit road. But actually saying that, Lucas Seville has gone for a 29th lap. So is Timo Isinghemi. So those guys have obviously saved some fuel somewhere. But Joseph Ringrose, this is going to be the interesting one. Ringrose pits after 29 laps, Randy. So I think 29 laps is going to be the maximum that we're going to see from these drivers as Ringrose gets it down onto the pit speed limiter, something that Matt Cook struggled to do. Cook is back out onto the track.
Shots fired.
He is in 6th position. He will bump himself back up to 4th once Kynan and Laville make their stops.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Where's he in Hoffman now, though, in comparison to Joseph Ringrose? Ringrose already on the way out. Super short pit stop, 7.6 seconds. I believe the shortest we've seen all day. And Jan Hoffman, I think, will just about be able to pick this spot up, or Willie, the 05 car, will just get around as Ringrose is coming off the pit exit right now. So it's not going to be a huge gap for Hoffman, and he's going to have a very underfilled Joseph Ringrose to deal with.
Fresh tyres and low fuel for Joseph Ringrose is going to put him straight on to the advantage to the number 19 machine. He's already tucked in behind the driver of Jan Hoffman, and for Hoffman, he's got to start defending hard. He's still got 13 laps remaining of this race after this one. Still a considerable way to go for these drivers, Randy, and you don't want to push it too hard too early. Last 5 laps, yeah, you really want to push it, but now I still think it might be a bit too early for some of these guys.
Yeah, I think if you're the 19, I think you need to give this about a lap before you really start putting on the pressure, because, of course, no tire warmers on these cars, so those tires are going to be cold. I would be more than happy if I were in that 19 car's position right now to just sort of cruise this first lap, get the tires up to temp, and then after about lap 60, lap 61, when we get it to about 10 to go, that's when you want to start kicking up the aggressiveness and putting the pressure on.
And also just a couple of cars behind us. Joe Ringrose very late into turn 1. He goes for the move. Very wobbly on the brakes for the 19. And he's going to lose a lot of time. Ringrose, too hard, too early. Replay up on your screens. Take us through this, Randy.
It's the exact thing I was talking about. Watch what happens with Joseph Ringrose. Just a little bit of impatience. He has newer tires, about 10 laps newer tires than Hoffman does, and more than enough time to get the job done. He gets the run up through the slipstream in towards turn 1 and is going to try to throw this move from way too far back. Snatches one of the rear tires that you know is still not quite up to pressure, not quite up to temp, and it just steps out, and he's going to give Jan Hoffman now about 2 to 3 seconds where he could have just continued keeping that pressure on. So for Joseph Ringrose, he still has pace, and he's already starting to reel in at least that one of the drivers that slipped through. That's a lap car, I believe, the 37 of Dave Walsh. Actually, no, the race leader, 37 of Dave Walsh, putting that 19 car lap down. So for Joseph Ringrose, maybe has time to somehow make something of this, but he's given Mr. Hoffman a little bit of time he didn't need to, and it's going to be the bulk now of this last 10 laps that he's going to have to try to bring that gap down and in.
And I think for Joe Ringrose, that's actually going to be quite a big lesson for him, especially going into the rest of the season. because he is new to this car. I know for a fact that he's new to this car, new to the series, and there's the little quirks like that, Randy, where it can get loose on the brakes. You do get the cold tyres that will catch people out, and we're seeing that today with some of the drivers who are experienced with the car, and we're seeing it today with some of the drivers who aren't.
Yeah, it really is. It's just, like I said, it's not the biggest mistake I think that I've ever seen or that anyone's ever seen, but it's just one of those things you have to know and be able to, you have to pick your positions. Actually, we got a car slowed through the Senate S. This is Josh Baird, who I know has been doing his stream on Mixer for today, but due to some technical issues on my side, we're not able to bring you that VR cam, unfortunately. Not sure what happened to Josh, though. Likely a self-spin in towards turn 1, which has really become the traditional place today for people to self-spin, Jack.
Yeah, see, the turn 1 or the second sector is where people seem to be like to spin today. As we're riding on board with Josh. Yep, just as you said, very lucky not actually to hit that tyre wall and get it stopped for the number 23 machine. So he has rejoined the race. He is back going again. However, he is 3 laps down in 22nd position. So for Josh, not the best first race of the season that he would have wanted. But looking forward by 3 laps, as Lucas Laville has called up to Matt Cook.
Yeah, the gap's close. It was a little bit closer last time by at about a second. I think Lucas Laville has lost a little bit of traffic through some lap traffic. A little bit of time through lap traffic, excuse me, but now he's going to have clear track and be able to start hunting down Matt Cook, who has lap traffic to deal with as well. So that time penalty really hurting Matt Cook. You think about the fact that that would have been, what, a 15-second stop and hold, I believe? Pretty much 24 seconds. If you imagine Matt Cook 15 seconds up the racetrack, he'd be running 3rd ahead of Andy Werner and between Logykal and Andy Werner. So for Matt Cook, that was a podium-costing penalty potentially. That said, he's still pushing forward, trying to reel in that car of Andy Werner. And actually, let's just take a peek at the lap gaps. He's reeling Andy in. He's 2 laps. He was about 8/10 quicker combined. Lost about half a second with the traffic. So maybe enough time for Matt Cook to potentially get to Andy and fight for that 3rd spot.
It's looking at about 4 seconds between the two, as you've just seen on your screen. So for Matt Cook, he has got a bit of work to do. And last time around as well, traffic was very, very beneficial for Joe Ringrose, because Jan Hoffman, he lost a second to the bricks. So those two are now back within a second of each other. Logykal and Dave Walsh, they're only 2.4 seconds away from each other, as we see Logykal getting himself past Joseph Ringrose now, putting him a lap down. So for Logykal, he's going to get involved, and the traffic is not only affecting your leaders, but also the guys in the mid-pack.
Yeah, and the thing to actually keep in mind, looking at that, one of the laps that Logykal was able to do was 8/10 of a second quicker than Dave Walsh. Not sure how much that was affected by the lap traffic, but even dealing with the lap traffic, that 77 car that we know is on light fuel on new tires has been very, very quick and keeping pace with that 37 car. So when Logykal can get some clean air, he's only going to have a few laps to potentially bring that 2.3 second gap down, but I think he might just about have the car to do it.
And 8 laps remaining in the race. It's very quickly counting down for these drivers with how long they have left, and Jan Hoffman has lost even more time, letting Logykal past in the middle sector. The gap is now down to half a second, which means that Joe Ringrose, on those newer tyres with a very similar fuel load, is in a good position now, Randy. He's just got to remember not to overcook it like he's already done once before.
Yeah, let's hope that that doesn't happen again. I don't think turn 1 will be a good move for him here, as Hoffman's got a little bit of a slipstream from Logykal going into turn 1, and Ringrose is going to keep it in line. But now we get to wait and see as your race leaders. Oh, as Hoffman actually makes a mistake coming off turn 1. Very quick flick of oversteer, does a good job to hold on to that, but Ringrose will slot his way through and take the spot away.
So Joseph Ringrose has got himself into 9th position with no trouble whatsoever, even after that slight mistake we saw just a few laps ago. And Jan Hoffman, he's got a bit of work to do to try and close that gap again, Randy, but it's already nearly a second. So I don't know whether Jan Hoffman can close that back up, and Joe Ringrose has managed to get himself into a very comfortable top 10 position on these Classic IndyCar Series debut.
Yeah, I don't think for Jan Hoffman, I don't think he's going to have much luck bringing that gap back down on him, because after Ringrose made that mistake, we saw how quickly he's been able to bring that gap back down and in, now pick the spot up. And as you take a peek, as you see the two of them behind the second place running car we're currently focused on, that gap's already opened up quite a bit by Ringrose. So I think Hoffman's pretty much is sort of destined for 10th place at the moment, but I want to see this lap through how much time, if any, does Joni Kajanen reel in on this lap. You'll see in just a moment what kind of time on lap 64 does Dave Walsh put in, as our graphics should update here shortly. It's a 1:18.4, and it's only about a 1/10 of a second that Kajanen has been able to reel in. He needs to open that up to about 2 to 3 tenths every single lap.
But of course, he's got to close the gap, but he's also got to get past. Dave Walsh hasn't really been challenged, as we have got a car stopped. I have a feeling we've had an accident on that final run up towards the start-finish line for the number 16 machine. And that is going to be your driver of Alex Stake. He hasn't had an amazing day, and he's still stuck there. He's sort of doing little sort of shuffles to try and get the car around. Randy, take us through what happened.
Well, we're going to take a peek. Actually, this may have been a little bit of car-to-car contact with, who is that, Andy Werner, putting him a lap down, forced Alex off to the right-hand side, and then Alex sort of, he clips the grass and then spins into this no man's land here where he gets stuck, and eventually is able to sort of Austin Powers this car around and get it back going again. So awkward moment there for the 16 between Andy Werner as well. He's sort of scared off the racing surface, and he loses a lot of time waiting until he eventually get himself back going again.
And with just 7 laps to go here at Interlagos, everything starts to get just that little bit more exciting. It's going to be 6 laps to go as Dave Walsh brings himself across the start-finish line. This time around, let's see what time that Joni Kajanen does. And in fact, Joni Kajanen is slower last time around, Randy. So the gap isn't closing. It's being extended, but only by 1/2 tenth that time. I don't think Joni Kajanen has got the pace to close the gap.
No, definitely doesn't. There's a couple points when we were looking at the times that they were doing through lap traffic that he almost seemed like he may have had it, but obviously not having it in clean air, and really was getting aided by the traffic was Joni Kajanen. As right now Dave Walsh looks actually absolutely dominant. We counted him out just a little bit in this fight for 9th, but Jan Hoffman is doing well to keep tabs on that 19 car of Ringrose.
And in fact, actually, the gap has closed back up to just 3 or 4 tenths of a second as Ringrose locks up one of his 4 tires on that machine into the turn number 7 in this second sector, and that's allowed Jan Hoffman to close up the gap even more. So this battle for 9th position may not be over yet. Might it be worth for Joseph Ringrose actually to let Jan Hoffman through, stick on his gearbox until maybe the final lap or something, get back past and consolidate his position so that he knows that he's not going to get overtaken on the final lap and then not have an opportunity to get the place back.
I don't know. I think that's really risky because there's nothing guaranteed in these cars, and we've already seen Ringrose make a mistake on the brakes trying to make a pass on Jan Hoffman. Of course, the tire temps have come up, and the car shouldn't be as squirrely as it was before, but you also have to keep in mind that Ringrose knows that Hoffman behind him has made a mistake relatively recently as well. So maybe you just let Jan Hoffman try to push himself into a mistake trying to make the move. Defensive goes Ringrose in towards turn 4. Hoffman might try it around the outside, but no. Does he get a potential run with a cutback?
And yeah, and for Jan Hoffman, he's got to keep trying with 4.5 laps remaining for these guys. It's going to be very quickly coming down to the checkered flag, and they'll be finishing this race before they know it. Joe Ringrose doing a very good job to defend into turn number 4. And I think for both these guys, they've both made mistakes on this final stint. They need to be careful on what they do. Using that first gear is risky. That's where we saw Jan Hoffman have his mistake. They're going to get very close as they head themselves through turn number 10, down through turn number 11 towards Logykal. And Logykal, I think, is going to be the important corner this time around, Randy, because if Jan Hoffman can get a good run, he's setting himself up very well for turn number 1 and an opportunity to get past Joe Ringrose.
Yeah, he definitely is. We're going to take a look off the rear of Josef Ringrose. You see Jan Hoffman there slowly trying to come in, getting closer and closer with the slipstream, but I don't think he's going to be close enough in towards turn 1, as we only have 4 laps to go for these guys to really try to settle this and figure this out.
And this is going to be a very interesting battle that we need to keep our eye on all the way towards the end of this race, because I have a feeling that Jan Hoffman is going to try everything in the book Ringrose goes defensive but gets back onto the racing line, clearly seeing that Hoffman isn't close enough to make a move, or isn't going to be racy enough to make a move, in fact. And I wonder whether Hoffman's just leaving it until a little bit later, to a point where Ringrose has got no chance to actually get back past.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's going to be really difficult here for both of them. That said, I don't think it's all said and done for Jan Hoffman. I don't think he has the easy pace to just make this move and potentially open up the gap. So is he maybe waiting? I think maybe a little bit, but at the same time, I don't necessarily think he could really afford to wait. I think if he gets the opportunity to get this pass done, he needs to pounce and he needs to take it.
Yeah, and I think that is what Jan Hoffman will do. Into Logykal once again. He took a very different line to Joe Ringrose, and Ringrose has got a good run onto the straight this time, riding on board with Hoffman now. Ringrose sticking to the inside of the track, being defensive up towards the start-finish line. 3 to go. He's going to stick to the inside. Hoffman looking to the outside into turn number 1. I think Ringrose might just about have it, but Hoffman could get the undercut through the second and third part of the center S. It's not going to happen. Joe Ringrose holds on to 9th position, heading out of turn number 3, but he's going to have to watch in his mirrors into 4. He's going to go defensive. Hoffman to the inside, following for the draft. Who's going to be later on the brakes is Hoffman. Hoffman tries to go around the outside, but Ringrose defending very well on the inside there, Randy, and holding on to this position, doing an absolutely brilliant job of making his car wider than the track, clearly, because Hoffman cannot get alongside.
Yeah, you're right. Hoffman just not getting the opportunities he needs. He needs to try to set that up into turn 1. Into turn 1, it's very difficult trying to defend because you can make moves on the inside and the outside a lot easier than you can at turn 4. Turn 4 is a little bit more single line, and in order to make a move on the outside, you really need that driver down low to make a mistake, and Ringrose just isn't going to make that. They're only going to have a couple laps remaining when they actually come across start finish this next time. Now Hoffman has lost a little bit of speed, and I don't think it's a great run off Logykal for him either.
No, it doesn't look like it, because the gap is out to 0.6 of a second. And while it isn't extending, it isn't coming down very quickly to start off with. Joni Kajanen is going very, very quickly, setting himself his fastest lap of the race so far and going half a second quicker than the driver of Dave Walsh. So Dave Walsh, with 2 laps remaining, whoa, Jan Hoffman has made another mistake through turn number 1 to the point where he's actually got to reverse back onto the track and get himself going again. It's very similar to the last time. This time I reckon it was a little bit too much curb.
Yep, I think it's the same exact mistake, actually. I think he just spins the rear tires up on exit just a little bit. So that fight is pretty much done and over with. Jan Hoffman's going to be the loser there, but we still have another one. Andy Werner and Matt Cook, they're within 0.4 of a second of one another. Matt Cook, following his penalty, has done well to push his way up towards that next position. And you see the times he's been reeling down. A full 0.7 of a second is what he brought in that last trip around the racetrack, likely helped by lap traffic, but they only have a lap and a half left to go as Dave Walsh is going to be coming off the final corner, and he'll be taking the white flag right here.
So the white flag will fly at Interlagos. 1 more lap to go in the first round of the Classic IndyCar Series for 2019. It's been a dominating race all day long for Dave Walsh, and he's done an absolutely perfect job other than when Josh Chin was able to take the lead. He looks very racy as well. Could have been someone to contend for the win in the closing stages. However, his mistake on pit lane cost him that one. For Matt Cook and Andy Werner, the gap is still coming down. It's now less than a second, 0.8, 0.7 as they come across the line. Matt Cook, he's going to close the gap. However, it's either going to be a drag race to turn 1, Randy, or it's going to be he's going to do it in the second sector.
Well, he was half a second quicker that penultimate lap, so he has just about the speed to get within about 0.2. Can he get more of it, though? He's not going to get the spot in towards turn 4, and they have Jan Hoffman that Matt Cook can potentially use at the pick as they run now through turn 4, as Dave Walsh is going to be getting ready to work through these last couple sectors and take the win here in the opening round of the Logical Innovative Engineering Classic IndyCar Series.
So Dave Walsh just has 1 more corner to go. Logykal has been very successfully navigated from here on in. It's an easy run to the line. It's been an easy race all day long for Dave Walsh. He got pole. He hasn't had fastest lap, but he's going to take his first win of the 2019 Classic IndyCar Series, starting his summer championship how he left the winter championship, by winning, and on the final lap of the race, setting his fastest lap and was within 0.003 of a second of Josh Chin's final lap. For Andy Werner, he is going to hold on the position over Matt Cook. Joni Kynan came across the line second. Andy Werner will start off 2019 with an absolutely brilliant podium. What the day could have been for Matt Cook, we do not know. It could have been second position for the American, but a pit lane speeding penalty meant that he came home fourth. And for everyone today, I think seeing that checkered flag is going to be a relief.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. As drivers start circulating their way through, Timo Isoiniemi going to take home 6. Hugo and Hernandez and Stefan Schlacker will be our last 2 drivers on the lead lap. They are, well, 15 seconds back with Hugo Hernandez and Stefan Schlacker about 25, 29, 30 seconds back as you see Hugo go through. So Stefan Schlacker, teammates with Dave Walsh, they both could put the cars in the top 8. I think they'll be happy with that result tonight.
And obviously Hugo Hernandez, CIS debut, finishing 7th. Joe Ringrose, another debutee today, finishing 9th position as Jos van der Ven brings himself across the line. Everyone has now finished this race, and we can show you your final finishing positions. Dave Walsh came home with an advantage of 4.5 seconds over Joni Kynan in second. Andy Werner is going to come home third. Matt Cook fourth. Lucas Laville, the Frenchman, after his slight mistake, is going to finish off his day in 5th position with his teammate Timo Isoiniemi just behind in 6th. Hugo Hernandez performing well on his debut in 7th. Stefan Schlacker in 8th. Joe Ringrose in 9th. And Jan Hoffman was able to hold on to the final finishing position in the top 10. 11th place is going to go to Cyril Gitzhofer, 12th to Daniel Schulmeister, 13th to Sasha Lamp, recovering after his early spin on the first lap to finish 13th, 14th to Sam Winton, Finn to Franz Josef Sturm, 16th Jos van der Ven, 17th Logan Simmons, Vesiula Ollie are going to finish 18th, Rory Collins in 19th, and Alex Athake in 20th. Alexander Adair Saunders is going to finish 21st, Mike Gelliker 22nd, Carson Bromley 23rd, 24th is going to go to Josh Baird, Hans Pitkanen 25th, and then your non-finishers, Josh Chin, Johnny Garrett, Zach Svahar, Todd Novosad, Randy Shoemake, Matt Molnar, Sage Karam, Andrew Aitken, Jonathan Diggs, Marshall Stanley, Robert Grosser, and not taking the start was Caleb Weekly. We're going to step aside for just a couple of moments here on RaceSpotTV and the iRacing Esports Network. And when we come back, we'll be catching up with all the drivers and getting in all the gossip from the first round of the Classic IndyCar Series.
Once again, photo finish here of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Will it be Tim Hogan? It's going to be Christopher DeMerit at the line. $500 richer. Two-time NASCAR pilot is your 2013 NASCAR iRacing. It's going to be Humvee winning the race, and it's going to be Conti taking away his first NASCAR 2017 NASCAR Beginner Free Series Championship to Ryan Luza. Federer is a four-time champion of the NASCAR Beginner Free iRacing Series.
The 2019 Classic Indycar Series is once again brought to you by Logykal Innovative Engineering. But of course, throughout the season, we will have certain races sponsored by other companies. The Oval Triple Crown is going to be brought to you by New Centric Solutions. The Indy Road and Road America rounds are going to be brought to you by Edifice Incorporated. And the Laguna Seca charity round is going to be brought to you by the Carol Hatton Breast Cancer Care Centre. All of these rounds and more are still available to sponsor for the Classic IndyCar Series for 2019. Well, the first round is done. Everyone has got the winter blues out of the way, and we are back racing in the Classic IndyCar Series again. Dave Walsh was able to take a dominating win up at the front of the series, up at the front of the field, sorry, and he is stood by with Randy Chenoweth.
And Dave, it was absolutely fantastic race from you. Of course, the only real hiccup you had all day was that sort of opening or that mistake kind of through the middle stint where Josh had the lead for a short time. Take me through your race otherwise.
I mean, I definitely didn't expect to pole it. I hadn't practiced quali until quali, so I just reduced the fuel, corrected the ride heights, and went for it, and then didn't expect pole, so especially not by 1,000th of a second. Then I got a pretty good start. Josh got a pretty bad start, which got him stuck behind Yoni, which was pretty good because I think he was quicker than me. Then he got past Yoni, but he didn't have to pass me because I just spun. And then when I came in to make my pit stop, he was just sitting there in his box behind me. So I knew he'd obviously wrecked it in some way, but I don't know what he did. So tough luck for him, and then good luck for me.
It was a mistake on pit road that cost Mr. Josh Chin. Just getting that car into the wall, basically through the nice little tight pit lane exit. But how is this car actually coming through? I know that it's been sort of a long off season for everyone. How is it getting back behind the wheel behind this older IndyCar that we have now that we have two iterations of it ahead in terms of development? And how do you find it drives compared to the old cars? And how is it coming off the winter and getting back to racing?
Well, for me, I ran the Winter Series for CIS, so that was my first ever time really racing this car. So I do have a fair bit of experience with it. I find that I can't set the new one up at all, and I usually can set this one up. So I think I am better in this one, but it's not too different. It is different, but I don't know. It's fine to drive.
Well, congratulations, Dave, on an absolutely dominant performance, leading the vast majority of the laps today. Before we let you go, who gets it done for that number 37 car?
Just everyone at TDR, really. That's about it. And then thanks to Robert for putting on the series.
Well, there he is. Mr. Dave Walsh absolutely dominates the race today, and he comes away with a big win in the opening round of the championship. Next driver we have in line is actually going to be your fourth place finisher, I believe, taking a peek at this, and it's going to be Matt Cook. We'll have to do a quick check to see if he's there, but Jack will be stood by with him if he is.
Well, Matt, you came home fourth position. A bit of an issue on that final stop by the looks of things with the speeding penalty. Today was really all about getting back into the groove of this car.
Absolutely, Jack. Yeah, just let it on a little bit too long before slowing down for the pit stop there. But you know, all things considered, I'm still happy with the result. Anything in the top five is always, you know, a benefit. So It's still a great start to the season. I'm looking forward to get back in the swing of things here.
And of course, obviously, the pit lane speeding penalty, I believe you were 30 miles an hour over what you should have been when you came into the pit lane. But other than that, you looked really quick out on the track. Of course, last year we knew you very much as the oval master, running a few of the road courses towards the end of the season and coming away with second in the championship and best rookie. This year, you've got your season off to a good start in 4th position. It's a long series with 14 races and 3 drop weeks. Surely your target is going to be getting that overall championship.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, like I said, it's a great start to the season. I'm not going to complain with it either way. But, you know, I'm definitely looking to still show that I can do things on the oval side and see if I can expand myself up into the road side a little bit more. This is a great start in comparison to last year's Sebring, where I don't even remember where I placed, but it wasn't good. So I'm definitely, you know, happy with it. Leaves me a little bit of room for drop weeks later on, and hopefully I can get things together.
And obviously, in 2 weeks' time, round 2 of the series, we're heading ourselves to Motegi on the oval, a very short oval, that one, 301 laps. If we see a very similar sized grid there as we did today, traffic is going to be really important in that race, and safely navigating traffic, I think, is going to be one of the biggest things that you guys up at the front of the field will have to work on.
Yeah, Motegi is definitely going to be a little bit more interesting. I mean, obviously you got turn 4 coming up there. A lot of cars tend to get loosed. But turn 1 and 2 now, we can also push up if the weather's too warm or something of that nature. So it's definitely going to be traffic intensive, and you're going to want to play it safe in terms of how loose you want to set that car. So it's definitely going to be a really challenging oval. More or less it is a driver track, so hopefully a lot of the guys practice up and we have a good race.
And before we release you back to your team, Matt, is there anyone you would like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Andrew and Randy on a great job, great start to the season. Overall, the effort that they put in, unfortunately not the best results today, but I know they're going to pick things back up. And always a big shout out to Robert on doing a fantastic job in getting this set up, and you know, thank you for continuing to run it.
Matt Cook came home today in 4th position after a slightly embarrassing second pit stop. What could have been for him, it could have quite easily been the 2nd place on the podium. But going forwards, I'm sure he'll be a little bit more tentative on the brakes into the pit lane. We're going to catch up with the driver of Lucas Seville. He came home today in 5th position, and he stood by with Randy.
Yep, I'm stood by with Lucas Seville. And it may not have been a great pit entry for Matt Cook, but it definitely was better than his Auto Club pit entry went. But Lucas, absolutely great race from you coming out. You started 4th, it dropped 1 spot back to 5th, but of course overtaken by a hard-charging Andy Werner. Taught me through your race. From what I recall, you had an absolutely amazing start. Nearly jumped Josh Chin to get yourself up to 3rd. But other than that, the start pretty much went, I think, as you would have desired.
Yeah, the start was pretty great for me. Excellent first stint. I was able to stay with Josh for a very long time for my standards, which is a testament to the work that all the guys at Vortex are putting into this car. The progress we made the last few months have been really, really huge, and we could show that today with me and Timo at the front. And unfortunately, didn't end up as I wanted, as I spun at the end of my first stint, losing like 10 seconds. So that's a top 3 that I threw away. But considering the strength of that field, I will take a top 5 any day. That's for sure.
And now talking about this car, it was always sort of a handful as I drove it back in the day as well, the likes of you guys. How has this car really changed with some of the updates that have come out? I know that physics-wise, there hasn't really been an update to the Aero 5 in a while, but with the likes of the track surface really changing temperature, I know that it was always sort of a big issue with this car trying to keep the rear end in check and keep the rear tires from spinning up. How difficult is that trying to do with the variable track temperatures you have and the track consistently warming up and heating up over the course of a race? And of course, whenever you have the random cloud come through and drop the track temperature 5-10 degrees for a few minutes and then immediately gets heated back up when the sun comes back out.
Well, as you said, it's the randomness, quote unquote, of the clouds coming in and out, and the track temp like rising and losing 10 or 15 degrees. That can mean like a full second or maybe more on a track like this, and grip changes drastically from one lap to another. So you really never really know what you can expect from, one lap to another with this car. That's really the biggest thing, the biggest difference for us with these last updates. The tires still have a huge lifespan, so I was able to keep my my tires for 1.5 stint. I kept them at my last stop. So yeah, that's pretty much the biggest thing, like knowing how to expect the car to react depending on the track temp, and you gotta monitor and be able to multitask in the car to know all these factors to be really fast.
We head to the Oval in Japan at Motegi for the next round. How do you guys at Vortex feel?
We feel really confident. We have the race winning set from the last time CIS run at Motegi. I have a feeling that things are going to be really different this time around, with guys like Matt coming around and Josh as well. So I mean, we don't really know what to expect, other than keep working hard to be able to be competitive in this huge fields. Guys like Sage Karam will bring over their knowledge in racecraft league. So this is going to be a super hard race.
Well, Mr. Lucas Seville, congratulations on a top 5 run in the opening round of the championship. Before we let you go, who gets it done for you guys over at Vortex?
Big thanks to Robert for running this alongside, me alongside him mostly. I'm just here for the banter, as some would say. Big thanks to you guys, Jack and Randy, for putting on the great show as always. I'm pretty sure, and for big thanks to all the guys for trusting us year in and year out, race in and race out, to be there with us all the time.
Well, there he was, Mr. Lucas Seville, who comes home in 5th place today. Next in line for the post-race interviews, Mr. Stefan Schlacker, who moves his way up 4 spots to finish 8th place. He stood by with Mr. Jack Stiles.
Well, Stefan, quiet day for you today. You were the last driver to finish on the lead lap of this race, and a return to the Classic IndyCar Series for you after last year. Just take us through your race today.
Well, I wouldn't really call it quiet. I was somehow able to stay with the first few guys for quite a lot. There was about a 4 car pack ahead of me for quite some time until we started to run into the first lap cars. Then I sadly dropped off of them, and I had 2 self spins and then 1 interesting spin where a car ahead of me spun, and then 8,000 RPMs is a bit harsh on your car if you mash the throttle. So spun myself into the barrier. Could have maybe gotten a 7th position there, but I would say nonetheless a very awesome first day here at Classic IndyCar Series, not only for me but for Total Downforce Racing in general, with Dave Walsh in first.
And that was actually going to be my next question. Of course, Total Downforce Racing, a new team this year, a new team for you this year as well, after last year competing with F4H. Just coming into the championship, knowing that you've also got support from 2 other drivers, has that given you a bit of a boost as well coming into 2019?
Well, the thing is, I didn't know that I'm gonna have 2 teammates driving with me until like 2 or 3 weeks before the season started. So that was awesome, and honestly, we're quite confident. Dave obviously winning the Winter Series already. Then we have Dakota, who is incredibly fast, just on baseline setup, and then especially on ovals, that's where he excels. So I think we're quite good set on how we're gonna perform this season. And yeah, I think the sky's the limit for us, because we know that we can push each other to higher limits.
And obviously there's some big teams in this series. You look at AeroX, you look at Logykal Vortex. They're people who, when it comes to IndyCar, they are the teams to beat. And between yourselves and Dave Walsh today, you've gone out and you've proven that you are there to fight with them. And that surely, I think for the rest of this season as well, that team is going to be a name and a car to look out for on the track.
Yeah, you're saying it there. We have Vortex, we have RX. They're household names in IndyCar series, and then we come in. Honestly, we didn't know where we're gonna stand. So we just want to have a good result and build from that. And then all of a sudden, we see Dave Walsh being in first, Dakota sadly not being here, and he's probably also gonna miss Twin Ring Motegi. But we're here, and it seems like we're here to stay.
Before we release you back to your team and go and celebrate Dave's win and your race today, who would you like to give a shout out to?
Well, obviously, first of all, our teammates at TDR in the background, Riley Thompson, and also have to thank Dave Walsh for lending me his setup, making me about 1.5 seconds faster than on my own setup, which, yeah, didn't really work out because I went on the wrong direction. Obviously, I also have to thank our sponsor, Blackbox, really helping us out here at Total Downforce Racing. And I also have to thank Joachim at Pixel Dust there for our incredibly beautiful IndyCar paint.
Stefan Schlager, he came home today in position number 8. We have one more driver to interview today, and that is going to be the driver of Joseph Ringrose. He made his debut today in the Classic IndyCar Series, and he is stood by with Randy Chenworth.
Yep, stood by with Joseph Ringrose, and Joseph, it was a good run from you. Qualifying, not great, putting yourself in the 19th spot, but you make it up in the race, make your way up 19 spots to get yourself into that 10 spots to get yourself into that 9th position. Talk me through your race. I know that you're one of those drivers who was initially really focused on the F1 side of things, trying to get into the World Championship Grand Prix Series. That rug kind of gets pulled out from under you, and you've sort of made the transition to IndyCar. How do you like these cars compared to the McLaren MP430 you were focusing on before?
Yeah, as you mentioned, obviously qualifying wasn't the best. P19, I wasn't really expecting to be that low. I made a completely changed the setup with 5 minutes to go, which obviously, looking back at it, was definitely the right move because I was just struggling in practice with the old setup. And yeah, just kind of just worked my way through, held my cars tight, and just waited to see what happened, and just kept it clean and managed to get myself P9. So yeah, pretty happy with that. Only really been in the car for a week as well, so can't be too disheartened with the result. It's similar to the McLaren in various ways, but as you said on the broadcast, obviously it's not built for road. It's definitely an oval car, and you can tell. But the throttle controller and that from the MP430 is definitely a real big asset in the IRO5.
And now talking about that, you being previously so focused on the MP430 and all on that side of things, are we going to be seeing you on the ovals, or are you going to be one of the road ringers over the course of this championship?
Yeah, I haven't really run ovals so much, but I'm definitely looking to get into it where I can. I believe it's Motegi in 2 weeks, so I'll be looking to most likely get in that. Have a couple of guys I'm running with and sort of working with who are good on the oval side, so maybe I can learn a thing or two from them. So that should be a real asset to me.
Well, thank you for joining us, Joseph, and congratulations on the opening round. Before we let you go, who gets it done for that 19 car?
Massive thank you, obviously, to the league organisers, you guys at RaceSpot, and the guys I've been working with this week to prepare for the race.
There he was, Mr. Joseph Ringrose. Our final interview of the day, comes home with a strong 9th place finish. Jack, control back over to you.
Well, I was about to say that's all we've got time for, but there's one driver who's just popped up who I would actually quite fancy a little bit of a conversation with, and that's Hugo Hernandez, another driver who's made their debut today in the Classic IndyCar Series, finishing in 7th position after starting in 9th, and for the number 72 machine having pretty much a good day all round. So Hugo, first of all, congratulations on a top 10 finish in your first round in the Classic IndyCar Series. Of course, a real-life single-seater racer in Formula Fords in, I believe it's Spain and Portugal. How does the skills that you learn in that kind of racing transfer over to the IndyCars that we race in this series?
Well, first of all, thank you. It's been a tough day today. Been suffering a bit of stomachal problems during the weekend, so it gave me a lot of practice. But once start learning from the real life races, I guess the feeling of the car, how to develop the setups, it changed quite a lot from the real life to the racing, but it really helps, especially on that and the racecraft.
And obviously, looking forward to the rest of the season, I know you've already said that you can't run a full season, so for you, a championship is kind of out of the question. But what is your aim for running in the 2019 Classic IndyCar Series?
First of all, is to develop myself as an IndyCar racing driver, to learn more about the car, learn more about the oval stuff. I will not be at every oval race, but I will be in a few of them, so hopefully I can learn a bit from that.
And well, Hugo, before we go and let you enjoy the rest of your evening, who would you like to give a shout out to?
I want to thank our racing team for all the help and support they gave to me during these last weekends. Also for my sponsor MRO and Northwall Team for their continued support.
And well, that's Hugo Hernandez joining us, finishing 7th today in the first round of the Classic IndyCar Series. And that is just about all we have time for here on RaceSpotTV and on the iRacing Esports Network. Thank you very much for joining us from start to finish for the first round here at Interlagos. And before we go, let's give a shout out to those who get it done here. And that is, of course, our cameras are provided by Istvan Balau of TrackCams22.com. The overlay is designed by Andreas Werner. He was racing today and he came home in 3rd position. The development of our overlays is done by Simon Grossman at AppEngineering.com. And live timing and scoring, as always, is provided by Nick Thyssen. I have been Jack Stars. Randy Chenworth has been beside me all race long. And we will be back in 2 weeks' time at the same time GMT from Motegi to continue the 2019 Classic IndyCar Series and our first race on an oval. And until then, good night.